two amazing lecturers here, actually. But David Hanna is the lecturer today. But we also have my very good friend, Ashley Crosswaite, who also gives very good lectures, and he wants to really help us. So we're very glad you're here, but particularly David, that comes all the way from Colchester, is it? Colchester. Can you imagine? Driven all this time. It's really wonderful, man. And what's more, his words are wonderful. His delivery is wonderful. So say something about us. Little bit.
So Universal Peace Federation, it's a worldwide network. It's an international NGO. We have general consultative status with the United Nations, but underlying each branch, each activity is a set of principles. And David Hanna will outline those principles today.
That's great. Yeah, also I would like to introduce David. You know more about it, huh? David is not only Reverend, but Doctor, Reverend Dr. David Hanna. I remember when he went to Wales, the University of, which one? Yeah. and he did something about spiritual world, yeah? I was most interested in his topic, but I didn't realize that in later years we'll have amazing lectures from him. He's also the director of North region of Europe.
He's the president of North Region.
President of the You do it.
North Region, both Family Federation and UPF.
I've slept 3 hours. I can't even remember things. But the thing is, he's a great guy, and he's really has a lot of responsibility and a lot of experience. We'd like to invite him.
Trivia fact, actually David has the driest sense of humor possible.
Which?
Thank you.
Do you need a chair?
It's okay.
Sometimes David wants to sit, if you don't mind.
Good morning, everybody. Wonderful, wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for giving up your Saturday, precious Saturdays. I mean, today is a real Saturday of sport, for those of you who love sport. But anyway, we're doing our own kind of sport here, so it's also very important. Thank you, Margaret. Margaret is never one to be short of an effusive compliment. So thank you. Always happy to work together. They do a tremendous job here, as you know. Margaret and Robin really have some extraordinary achievements between them, really, to propel this work forward. So thank you. I'm very happy to have a chance to talk to you and to everybody who's online. So if you all turn around and wave, maybe somebody catches a little. We do have some very, very dedicated people who are, I'm sure, sorry they can't be here in person, but we are including them as best we can. It's not always easy for you to catch everything, but so if we do have some questions or comments from the floor, please wait for the microphone to come to you, and then those online will catch your words as well. So this is a short introduction to the founder's vision. You saw on the video, if you caught something of that, a lot of the international programs, the very high-level programs which are going on through UPF International. And it's really very important and quite impressive, and it's moving forward at a great pace, actually. And it's doing some extraordinary things, as you'll have seen there. Today, rather than being a kind of regular UPF meeting, is slightly different today, because what I'm sharing is, it's not necessary for a person who is meeting and working with UPF to know the things that I'm going to share. It's more for friends and people who know us, who then want to understand a little more deeply the thinking, the thought, the teaching of the founder, Reverend Dr. Sun Myung Moon, and his wife, who's carrying on. They're just like a totally united couple working together, so she is carrying on that work. Very hands-on, actually. And their thought, they kind of developed, and it underpins so many of the activities and important work that the unification movement generally is doing. So this is a chance to get to know the ideas that kind of underpin things a little bit more. So it's some insights into Father Moon's thinking, religious thinking. What I'm sharing with you, I'm not asking that you have to accept what I'm saying or take them as your beliefs. No, that's not the purpose. We're not, as you know, about changing anybody's beliefs, but about having us work more effectively together. And that's the real purpose. And if you understand these things, I think you will have more feeling in your heart to join in with future programs and activities. That's my hope, anyway. So thank you very much. I'm going to share, first of all, in this little... Oh, they've removed the clock, which is a very dangerous thing to do. Oh, I see it. Well, I can't see it, so sorry about that. Right, okay, so I have to take a few more minutes than on the schedule to catch up, but it'll all work out. Don't worry, I have absolute faith. We'll have a lovely day together, so not to worry. The first session I'm calling Universal Values as a Foundation for World Peace. Obviously, UPF is all about world peace in very practical ways. So let me share with you some words of Father Moon, words of the founder. This comes from 1985 at an assembly of the world's religions, which he convened in America for people of all religious backgrounds, religious leaders. He said there, religions should not be concerned with God's will for world salvation, or should be concerned with God's will for world salvation more than with the salvation of the individual or the welfare of their own denomination. As far as I know, God is not sectarian. He's not obsessed with minor details of doctrine. We should quickly liberate ourselves from theological conflict, which results from blind attachment to doctrines and rituals, and instead focus on living communication with God. In God's parental heart and his great love, there's no discrimination based on color or nationality. There are no barriers between countries or cultural traditions, between East and West or North and South. Through interreligious dialogue and harmony, we should realize one ideal world of peace. So this indicates, maybe why there's an unashamed kind of openness and focus on religion and all religions in UPF's work. It sees that people in the religious field are very much key players in bringing about a world of peace. They should be at the front line of those efforts, right? According to their respective teachings and doctrines. We know it's not always the way, and sometimes even religion can be a source of problems. But in essence, this is a rich resource for humanity, and we're looking to find and to bring out themes that are in common across these traditions, which are of real value to humanity as we go forward. So religion itself, UPF would say, has a real contribution to make, because true religious practice seeks to restore peace, and it promotes certain things, such as humility in front of God, respect to parents, fidelity in marriage, loyalty and public service. It promotes personal discipline, sacrifice and control of physical desires. This is common to the various traditions. If you have a personal tradition, you might recognize, that in what I'm saying. If you don't have any particular faith, or you don't subscribe to a particular point of view, religious point of view, please understand that these are talking about a general kind of principles. So you can think about something which has a good purpose in life, and I'll show you how to apply that later. In this way, UPF is very open to people of no particular faith, conscientious people. We feel they're very essential for the work that we want to do, to have people of good heart and good nature and good mind and good intention working together. But religion also teaches, in its essence, restraint and patience and forgiveness in relationships. It's things which are very valuable to peacemaking, and also that you should love others as you love yourself. You also have to love yourself as one who's loved by God. And it teaches love of neighbor, and even, love of one's enemy, to see that people who might stand against you are victims themselves of something, and they need to be liberated from those wrong attitudes. I'm going to make a few interreligious quotations, or religious quotations. I could choose from many different traditions, so there's no kind of favoritism here. But I'm going to start with one from the Holy Quran. And it says there, talking about this kind of role of the inner life of religion, prayer restrains one from shameful and unjust deeds, and remembrance of God is the greatest thing in life without doubt. Well, I wasn't brought up as a Muslim, but I like that quotation very much, right? So, and I could happily carry that around with me in my heart and share that with anyone. There's also, in life and peacemaking efforts, there is the human factor. This is so important. For any organization, it's very important. The integrity of the individual is really a key. It's people who make decisions in the end, isn't it? And we have to think, what are they basing that on? What is their kind of source, or their particular take on the kind of wisdom of the ages? And their character is shaped by their experiences and their influences. Everybody can't escape this kind of way in which our characters are formed and our opinions are formed. So we are saying that it's very important to find unity based on values which are as universal as possible. That means you'll find them in all such traditions as we've described, and as are just represented here. There are many more traditions, so this is just a representative selection, just 10 of those world traditions. And we can look to values that are common to the world's great religions and great philosophies, and out of that make a very harmonized teaching. Therefore, the great benefit of meeting and working together is that we don't have to require anybody to change their beliefs, as I say. So UPF in this way is working for unity and respecting all paths of faith, and encouraging people to unite, centering on these universal values. So what does the unification principle, or the teaching of Father Moon, what does this provide? That's an interesting kind of question. I would say it's a new expression of religious truth for our age, and our age has particular challenges, doesn't it, right? So, young people are being educated in quite a different way, and they're very, maybe more capable and more open to all kinds of things than ever before. But religious truth needs to be updated all the time in its expression. Truth is truth, and it never changes, right? But still the expression can be different. And this teaching of the unification principle, it opens the way for a harmonized view of religion and science, which is extremely important in our day. Not to feel that these are two great areas of human endeavor which are opposing each other. Rather, it takes, again, a unified view, not surprisingly, right? But it needs the kind of expression of truth to be able to show that and to employ that. It also identifies universal values that are present in major world faiths, as I've indicated, and in the process reveals God as a God of heart. This comes through Reverend Moon's own very deep and profound experiences from childhood onwards with the living God. And it reveals God as a God of heart, and I'll explain that a little bit more later, and identifies clearly the importance of human responsibility, providing understanding for tackling very real problems. Therefore, UPF work is doing many practical projects that are absolutely hands-on peacemaking efforts. And it also combines these aspects of revelation and reason that have been running through human endeavor, sometimes seemingly opposed to each other, but it's a way to unify the good aspects of both of these. As I speak, I do have a little caveat to share with you, right? Because I'm talking very openly. But first, especially in this initial talk here, I'm talking about an original ideal, an original plan. You could say it's God's plan. It's something very, very fundamental. And it doesn't mean that, life is like that for many of us, right? So there's a difference, perhaps, between the ideal and the reality. Are you with me? So I'm very aware of that. I want you to know that I'm aware of that. I'm not just talking with kind of, beautiful ideas, but somewhere in this view of life is the idea that having an ideal is very important because it's something to aim for. It's something to know what should we be doing or what should we be like, not just kind of always going to the lowest common denominator in terms of our exchanges and our relationships. We have to aim for what the ideal could be, what potential is there. So, and also I'm freely referring, as you know already, right, to God and to religious concepts. But I feel quite free to do that today because I'm explaining Father Moon's view and his understanding. And this is it, right? So, take it as a point of interest if you don't personally agree with that or it's not so important to you. But I hope in some way that it is. And I'm also not implying any judgment at all on people who think or choose to behave differently to the various examples that I'm giving. Are you with me? Yeah. Right? So, we know very diverse opinions in our world today, and we're very conscious of, respecting those differences. Me too. I'm like that, right? But I'm picking on certain things because this is related to the ideal and to Father Moon's teaching and presenting them to you. Somewhere, I think these ideas are getting smothered in the kind of noise of a lot of what else is going on in society. And they need some kind of refocus and some reevaluation and some revisiting. I'm talking mainly about the ideas of marriage and family. So that's what we're going to do today, all right? So the first cause in Father Moon's thinking is God, the Creator, but God is a God who has internal character and also an external form, not a form that you can see, but he uses this expression to emphasize that there's some deeper inner part of God and there's a more kind of external presence, which is like a prior energy in the universe, which is always seeking to create and to develop further. So there's, in God the Creator, there's the origin of the internal character of everything, and we would say, everything has its own internal, invisible character or nature, and is the origin of the external form of everything. So everything in the material world comes from this same source, and therefore spiritual things are absolutely valuable, physical things are absolutely valuable. Both, the spirit and the physical side of the universe come from the origin. That already is quite a massive historical, philosophical statement, right? Yeah. Because people have taken kind of one or the other, right? You could be a Marxist and say, no, everything is material, and even what we call spirit comes out of material things. It's just a product of the brain. Well, this philosophy and theology is saying, no, that's not true. But neither is this world something kind of inherently evil or false. It's actually a part of, it's like the external body of God almost, right? And behind it is a purposeful heart and mind, which is giving direction and meaning to everything. So also, there's another kind of set of paired characteristics. That is, this God, the Creator, is the origin of the masculine nature of everything, and also the origin of the feminine nature of everything. And that dichotomy, that kind of relationship or paired relationship, complementary aspects of masculinity and femininity go through everything. The plant world, the animal world, the subatomic world. You get positive and negative ions. It's all a kind of paired relationship of something which in essence are two complementary characteristics. And revisiting this is very important nowadays, I think. It's not just talking in terms of biological sex or something, it's to do with character and something deeper than that. And this is where there's a benefit, I think, from the input of Oriental wisdom. Right? So Orient will say, well, to everything that is like convex in shape, there's also a concave. These two go together. So convex and concave. You can't have one without the other. And, you take anything, even like music, right? There are notes. But if there were only notes and no space between the notes, you really wouldn't have music. So that nothingness is tremendously important. So when there's a sound and when there's not a sound, it's the interplay of those two things, isn't it? So this is the kind of thinking which underpins this. And likewise, every human being has a masculine and feminine nature. We both have those. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for men or women to understand each other. Or shall I say, even more difficult. So, these are qualities or characters which run through the whole universe and are present in God. So traditionally, we've always thought of God as male, right? We use he or... But interestingly, the trend today is a kind of awakening to the fact that God is as much a mother God as a father God, right? This is absolutely significant. And Father Moon's own expression was parent. And in his native Korean, it's useful because there's no such obvious distinction between singular and plural. So parent is something which can imply, the qualities of both mother and father. Anyhow, the nature of God. Well, this is an interesting place to start, isn't it? Did you think I'd be talking about this? This is Father Moon's thinking. It's very fundamental, his understanding of the nature of God. So God has an internal character. This includes such things as intellect, emotion, will, concepts, laws which are operating throughout the universe. They're consistent, they're universal. And there's this external form, which we can call original energy, or energy before it becomes energy that we experience in the universe. It gives rise to that. It's something that gives rise to the external form of everything. But that's not all. As if I could be cheeky enough to build a kind of diagram of God, I'm going to attempt it, right? In the center, meaning, spiritually, meaningfully in the center is something he calls heart. Heart. It's, you have to almost redefine this word because it's very, very profound. But we use this term as a translation of the Korean version. So what is heart? Heart is the impulse to experience joy through giving and receiving love. Wow. Eh? So it's something deeper than love itself. Could you imagine anything deeper than love? Where does love come from? There's behind it this impulse to have an object for your love because love needs a relationship, right? It doesn't have a meaning outside of relationship. So there's this impulse to have that. It's an impulse even to create in the first instance. Wow. So profound for a Saturday morning, isn't it? Goodness me. Wow. Anyway, it's the source of meaning and the source of motivation for creating. This is why. And also it's something that we inherit as human beings. We want to create. We want to discover more things, create a better society. We want to have new and better conversations with people. We're always doing this, right? I want to bake a better cake than I baked last time, right? There's something there, and a heart to discover and to find things that can benefit humankind. So heart is the source of meaning, and it's very much the core of human nature as well as God's nature. And already I indicated this kind of pair system. The philosophical aspect of unification principles calls this pair system subject and object pairing, this kind of complementary relationship between subject and object pairs, like internal character and external form, or masculinity and femininity, although those two are very dynamic, Any one can be the subject at any time, right? So the subject has the nature in the moment of initiating, and the object has the nature in that moment of reciprocating that or responding to that. So this is the nature of relationship, isn't it? You can't have two people talking at the same time. So people have to learn how to talk well and have to learn how to listen well, right? So it's very important. There are two aspects. The listening is the more object side, the talking is the more subject side. And for any meaningful conversation, that has to swap around, doesn't it, right? You can't have one person talking all the time. So, and I sometimes say, have you ever had the experience of talking with somebody, and after a while, you just get a feeling they're not actually listening to what I'm saying? Or is that only me that's had that experience, right? And then, because you say something and then they say something, but they're just continuing from what they said before. But actually, these two should develop the idea. So at the end of a really good conversation, you should both look at each other and say, where did those ideas come from? That's wonderful, right? Was it from you? No, I thought it was from you, right? These ideas come because you're having a good kind of exchange based on these principles we call give and receive relationships. So this is very important, right? And I don't think of these things as religious doctrine. Do you? Doesn't sound like that. It's very fundamental. It's about life itself. So, in the human being, the individual, mind is subject, body is object. There's that kind of relationship and should be. There's husband-wife relationship, which as I said is dynamic, so don't read it just in a two-dimensional way. Through give and receive or give and take action come all the forces, all the energies that are necessary for existing, for multiplying, and for acting. Wow, life is like that. And life, at the moment, cannot be explained even by the top scientists, right? What is this thing called life? Life has this, desire to move forward and to progress and become more complex. Where's that coming from? Eventually, science has to come into the area of religion and say there must be this purposeful mind and heart behind everything, which is providing the energy for this. So I believe everything will come to a unified view in the end. So in nature, in God, all pairs relate centering on a common purpose. They find that common purpose in their reason for existing, and that comes from the Creator. So within God are all these subject-object pairs harmonized and unified, but when God creates and it's manifested in this world, it takes the form of distinct subject-object pairs, like mind and body or man and woman. Are you with me? So there's always this paired relationship. And we need to kind of rediscover this and reevaluate this and see how beautiful this system is and how universal this system is. So God's energy in everything, which I've represented by those little white arrows, causes a subject-object to come into some kind of relationship. It drives that relationship. It moves all dual characteristics to form a common base for their mutual relationships. It encourages unity to create something greater, and it's the foundation for God's eternal existence. Wow. So relationships in this way are very key. And if there's any way of describing Father Moon's theology, I would say it's a relational theology. It's all to do with relationships, including the fundamental one between God and human beings. So where there's harmonious interaction between these subject-object pairs, we see the emergence of love, of truth, of beauty, of goodness. This is where it comes from in our world. And this is how we can, by doing this right, centering on a common purpose, we can produce things of value. So God is a God of heart, remember that definition? Is investing love into human beings. What is the response to love? It's to love back, isn't it? Right? If you feel genuine, pure love, that you feel, I don't deserve this, naturally you want to return it back. We call this kind of return of love in this case beauty. Maybe it's a philosophical choice of word, right? But so the response to love is to give beauty. So any husbands in the room today? Right, husbands, if You've worked this out for yourself, I'm sure, that if you love your wife more, she becomes more beautiful. Did you notice that?
Yes.
And yeah, absolutely. So this is a response, and it's mutual, I'm sure. Okay. All right. She didn't appreciate that love you were giving, so. So what is the response for human beings to God's love? Is actually such things as humility, it's honesty, it's trustworthiness, you could say, it's faithfulness. It's these kind of qualities, like loyalty as well, which we see passed on down through the world's religious traditions. And especially the time-old kind of proven medium for that is stories, through stories in the great textbooks of religion, the Holy Scriptures. These stories are all about loyalty, faithfulness, trustworthiness, honesty, humility, and more, right? So that we can learn what it is to live a life that returns something to God in beauty for what we've received in terms of love. And the result is joy. That exchange brings joy to both partners. So we live in a world of complementary pairs. So these are just some of them, you know. Everybody loves it when the in the ballet, the prima donna and the main male dancer dance together, right? It gets the most applause because it's that interaction which is just so stunning, and yet they each have their own role, right? So, I mean, you don't often see the woman lifting the man up above her head and, you know, twirling round. But sometimes the husband, who in that case, no, it could be, but the male dancer is maybe dressed in black. So it's like, you know, I'm not so important in this, right? But yet he's also the subject and enables the female dancer to almost float across the room, right? Across the stage as he's carrying her, you know? And everybody's thinking, ooh, she's flying. We know she's not really flying, but it just creates a magic, right? And it's a kind of something we can relate to because we know there is this magic available, right, to us in the complementary pairing of male and female. And we see it in the animal world, in the plant world, and even, we're going to have thunderstorms later today, right? So that's the kind of clash of plus and minus, these two complementary aspects. And, yeah, that can be used as an analogy for love between husband and wife, right? So there's a foundation here for lasting peace and happiness, which is coming out of this explanation. So when our mind and body are centered on God and find their common purpose in God, that is where, through that good harmonious relationship, we can become a person of integrity, a good person. And we need to center on some higher values or higher purpose. And I say that to people who maybe are not comfortable with the concept of God. That's fine, Think about centering on a higher purpose and something of higher value that's common to all. And this will bring the same result. So when there's mind-body unity, we have a person of integrity. That means their words associated with the mind match their deeds, which are associated with the body. So they're working together in a really good, harmonious way. And I think it's fairly universal that we appreciate a person of integrity, right? But when a person's words and deeds don't match, they soon lose our kind of admiration, right? We don't have time for such a person. So it's very universal what we're talking about here. And in this system, the individual, in growing from a baby to adulthood, is growing in character, is maturing in heart. This aspect of love is being developed. We're learning to unite mind and body and have them work in the right relationship and order of priorities. It's a time to develop our spiritual sensitivity that this person can become a dwelling place of God, and the love of God can be at the heart of that person. So they're able to give and receive true, genuine, altruistic love. How does that sound? This is the goal for the individual. You will find that religious traditions of the world all kind of feed into this in their best. Where they're at their best, they're encouraging people to live this kind of life. And as I said, we look to find people of integrity. There are three, extraordinary human beings here. None of them is without their flaws, right? We have to say. But their contribution is also recognized as being very, very significant, becoming a responsible individual with integrity and developing a heart of love toward others. That means I'm now an individual who can contribute to the building of a peaceful, ideal world. I'm a positive presence in the world, if you like, such as these figures that we see, Martin Luther King Jr., Mother Teresa, Mahatma Gandhi, this kind of thing. So, but none of these people, in a way, is any different to you or I in some respects, right? So when I was teaching as a secondary school religious education teacher, we were asked to focus on these individuals, and also Nelson Mandela was maybe the fourth one, and then the list dried up somehow. Like, who else is there? Rather sad to see, but I'm sure there are many, many wonderful people in history. But that was the kind of thing. And yet, everybody is open to making that kind of contribution in their life. It doesn't have to be so noisy and public as these, but it still can be in quality the same. Then the second kind of aspect or foundation for peace in society is, for husband and wife to unite together. So when a man has kind of gone through that process of individual development and mind-body unity, they can find and naturally want to find a person they can settle down with and make a family with. This is a natural human desire. Same for a woman who's matured in love and heart, and somehow then it's not feeling enough. I want to find somebody. Of course, not everybody feels that or can do that successfully. This is why I'm talking about ideal, right? That's the reason for my caveat. So I know not everybody's life works out like this, but let's think generally, for human beings. This is our aspiration, that this should work well, and then through the love between husband and wife, centered on a common purpose, then they can raise a family and, pass on that tradition of love. Ideally, children should see in their parents the nature of God, and they don't have to go a kind of philosophical route or some other route to try and understand who God is. They would see it in the love and feel it in the love that they receive from their parents. And this understanding is saying that this is the key building block for an ideal world. Out of this family comes the kind of unit which can expand then to a wider family, society, nation, world. So we should be, from the beginning, one world family and really live like that. But we've lost it, tragically, right? And we become very divided and very opposed against each other. So that is the tragic history of humankind. So again, centering on higher values and a higher purpose, the family can become a building block. Now, any being is interdependent, can't exist just by itself. And a family is where this is most kind of evident and played out to its fullest. We're created to exist through reciprocal relationships, and it's in the family that we learn many important aspects of love. When I'm referring to love here, or true love, this isn't a simple kind of fairy tale romantic idea. It's something, I explain it here. This is using from an American psychologist, Greg Bear's definition. True, genuine love. It's unconditionally caring about the happiness of another person. That's the kind of thing you can memorize, isn't it, right? Unconditionally caring about the happiness of another person. Wow. True, genuine love. So there's love and there's love, right? So this is talking about true love or genuine love. He uses a phrase, real love. But where do we learn this true love, this quality of love? First from our parents. They're our first teachers. So the family is the school of love. It's where our nature, our heart and character are nurtured. And it's a primary, if you like, training ground for relationships, right? This is where we learn them all. We go through some mistakes and we have to learn the hard way, but there's always a loving and caring parent around to help us through this kind of process. So it's growing in love, which is a complex thing to do as a human being, right? And we also learn that in relating to brothers and sisters, to parents, to grandparents. And the family then is the school of morality and ethics. It's the basis of societal norms and proper conduct in a wider world. So when you're mature enough and you can start to venture out into the wider world, you're going to take what you learned in the family with you and apply that to your wider circle of brothers and sisters. Or every elderly person is like your grandmother or your grandfather, and you treat them the same way. This is why family actually can be such an important place of learning, of development. And if we jettison the family in our society, we lose it at great peril, right? Because we are not acknowledging this most important school of love. Also, we learn true love as husband and wife, where we see God in our partner, and the partner to us is like an image of the Creator, living for each other and the family and the wider world. This is also making us a wonderful model of true love to children, that they see and experience as an example, not just as a theory. So a strong family has a focus that's higher than itself. Are you with me? And it should do. So it's not just for the family's sake, it's there to go beyond that and take these ideals out into the world. So we experience, very special and unique aspects of love in such a family, if we have that blessing and that opportunity. Child's love, siblings' love, spouses' love, parents' love. When we get to the point of experiencing parents' love, we're starting for the first time to feel what is God's love for us. This is the same kind of quality of love, unconditional, true love. and therefore it kind of rounds us out as human beings in God's image. And each of these is different in quality, right? And has a different kind of nature or aspect of love. Here is Father Moon speaking. Again, he said, in the family there are 4 levels: grandfather and grandmother, father and mother, you and your spouse, your sons and your daughters, and the world is the extension of these relationships. Thus you need to love the people of the world whose ages are similar to the people in your family in the same way that you love your family members. Right? So learn the love in the family and then apply that to the wider society. This is called the principle of living for others, or sometimes for the sake of others. It's living for others. Do we see that kind of coming through in world scripture? The holy books? Yes, we do. Here's Luke 17 in the New Testament. Whoever seeks to gain his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life, not hanging on in a self-centered way to your life, whoever loses it will preserve it. It's an interesting kind of almost paradox. And you get in Buddhism, have compassion for all beings, rich and poor alike. Each has their suffering, big theme in Buddhism. Some suffer too much, others too little. Teach this triple truth to all: a generous heart, kind speech, and a life of service and compassion are the things which renew humanity. Wow, that's another one I would carry with me in my wallet, right? And look from time to time. Such a universal truth. Or in the Holy Quran, do not expect in giving any increase for yourself. Although interestingly, true love is the only thing that when given actually gives back more than you gave. It's curious, right? So that's God's design. Here in the Bhagavad Gita, in Hinduism, of sacrifices, the sacrifice performed by those who desire no reward is the nature of goodness. Or anybody here with a Sikh background? What is the love? What is that love which is based on greed? Where there is greed, the love is false. It's not true love, right? So, those are 2 foundations for lasting peace, for the individual, for the family. The third is ourselves in relation to the wider world or the whole environment. We can say the natural world. So again, centered on the kind of original purpose which comes from the Creator. We need a good, healthy relationship with this wider world, and then we can have harmony between human beings and the world around us. So again, centering on a higher purpose or higher values, then we can become people of true ownership, of responsible stewardship. We're just waking up to this nowadays. It should have been long ago we woke up to this, but it's becoming a necessity. We need dominion through love, caring for the environment, so that there's material prosperity for all. It's a mutual benefit. And science and technology also can benefit all human beings, and the natural world as well will not suffer unduly. So true ownership, responsible stewardship, this is what we need to encourage. And, we can say, as Father Moon says here, it's my last kind of longish quotation, I hope you bear with me. He said, we are born for the sake of love, live for the sake of love, and finally die for the sake of love. Not only people, but all beings desire true love. This is why human beings, as the highest beings in creation, should embrace and love the masterpieces of God's creation and teach creation how to love. All creation is longing to receive and experience God's love through men and women who have become one with God at the pinnacle of true love. And it's a shame that we've not realized this degree of love up until now. Right? So relating everything back to love. This is very fundamental in Father Moon's teaching. If we go back 2,000 years, we had the person of St. Paul in his letter to the Romans saying the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. Which is very perceptive, isn't it? Especially for 2,000 years ago in the Roman Empire, right? He's saying the creation is groaning in travail. It's waiting for people of integrity to be born, right? And to practice and to live true love, essentially. And then, creation will be free. It's done nothing wrong, but it's not able to enjoy a proper relationship and be valued and loved as it should. So when we put these together, and this is my final point, when you put these together, you see three foundations of peace, as we call them, in UPF. But you may see the kind of echoes of this in fundamental religious teaching elsewhere. As I said, truth is not new. Religious truth is not new. But the expression of it is new and needs to be updated for every generation, really. But if you go back to even Genesis, is mentioned a few times, to key figures, the first ancestors, named Adam and Eve, also to Abraham, to others, to Noah. Three great blessings from God. Be fruitful, multiply, and have dominion over the earth. In a sense, you can see the similarity, can't you, with this? The first is to be fruitful as an individual. Then it's to multiply, although multiply is a rather crude word, just to say. Go and multiply, right? Oh dear, how are you going to... Yeah. And have dominion? Yes, but what kind of dominion, What is that? It has to be centered on love. So I include this to show that these ideas have very deep and profound roots, and it comes out of Father Moon's own revelation that he received and his insight and prayer over Holy Scripture to get to the essence of what life is about and then share it with us for our peace-building and peacemaking efforts. Thank you very much, everybody. God bless you.
You sit here, please. Please, David. How much time do we have? We usually... Huh?
It's up to you.
Yeah, we usually give some time for people to ask, address, or give a comment. It is the best thing I've ever heard. But, whatever you want to say. If you can be brief and clear, then it would be okay. Who's that? Nobody wants to say anything? Hey.
Oh, one of
Christopher, can you give the
microphone?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Here, this is Christopher, number 2. Yeah, number 2.
Oh yeah.
You have.
No, I like the way you summarised all that, comparing various religions and beliefs and things.
Closer to
what I wanted to ask you is, a lot of these principles, do you think these are being inseminated early enough in children? Not just at the family level, but at school and...
Yes.
Because if you leave it, once they get into work and then become leaders, do they have the foundation to become leaders with character? Because it seems to me that there is a real lack of that nowadays. And that could be a failing of the education system.
You can talk from the
Okay, that's right. We got it.
Can you take the...
We got it. Okay, don't worry. Where are you going to go? I feel awkward.
I'm here.
If you...
I'm here.
If you are standing and I am sitting...
That's fine. I can sit as well. No, just if somebody wants it. I think next.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Of course, we're in the kind of repair stage of things, right? In fact, as we sometimes refer to religion as being a repair shop, But of course, where those traditions are well in place and the education is good and children are brought up in that kind of environment that naturally should be learning these things, whether people are so aware of that even within those traditions, that might not be the case, because often we believe in certain things but we don't apply them, So this teaching is very necessary. And I think, if it comes to people even who are parents or about to be parents, it's also very helpful because they can, incorporate that into their life and for their raising of children. So I'm not saying there's a quick fix available here, right? But it's very necessary to incorporate these as early as possible, because even, to have it kind of presented a little bit intellectually as a kind of theory or philosophy or something, in a way, I agree with you, it's almost too late, right? But luckily, naturally, UPF brings people together who already have a good foundation, whether you recognize that or not. But, that's the wonder of how it happens, isn't it, Margaret?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting here listening to these things, right? So, this work is way beyond UPF. It's to do with, we say, a restoration of humanity. It's late in the day, but it's not too late, right? This is what we need now. So thank you. We can talk more again about that, and it might also be answered a little bit when we get on to the later stages. So I hope so. Yes.
My name is Kostas. Thank you so much for the amazing distillation of all this knowledge. And I want to make a comment and then ask you a question. First of all, this knowledge, wisdom, is not only on the religions. It's in ancient Greece, everything in moderation, know thyself. And then even great Alexander, he done it too early for those days. He wanted all the people to come together and based on their virtues and their gifts rather than the language, religion, and have actually a whole oath on that. But my question is, nowadays we're on the tipping scale. We're moving in the right direction, although it looks chaos now. But a lot of people, they feel down, they don't know what to do. And I wanted to ask you, from my understanding is, the most important thing is intention. Because we create reality with the way we think. And by avoiding watching all the media and all the disasters, etc., then it's like a Formula One driver. We focus where we go, and that contributes to the world to go to the right direction. So where it comes intention, the question is, where intention comes to the teachings that you shared with us, and how that can be utilized for mental health and better world. Do I make sense, or my heavy accent was?
No, you're good.
Yeah. Do you want to go first on that?
I'm more with the first question. I was Christian, brought up Christian, went to school, and then afterwards to church a little bit. The moment I went to university, I saw many good people that they were not Christian, and I thought I was like cheated that their people are good, and I kind of lapsed a bit, and I lapsed so much more because I married a Muslim, and I'm Christian, and I didn't want to look into religion, I wanted just to be happy, be a good person, be with my Muslim husband that I don't mind, and he doesn't mind that I'm Christian. So let's sleeping dogs lie, But God had other ideas. I was 33 years old. It was Jesus' age, I remember, that I met this movement. And they were talking things, and I don't like too much religion. I said, don't talk about religion. So they start talking about things like this, that David is doing, This is not a religion, this is an understanding of God. Do you know what? I changed 180 degrees regarding God. I started to have spiritual life, and I felt, my God, how late I am in this. But look, nobody can be late if you can grasp it, if you can have a relationship with God. This is very, very, very true. And once I had a relationship with God, I don't almost need anything else. I need Him. I need His wisdom through the things that I know, And even now, after 33, I'm now 76, after all these years, I still sometimes waver or something. I just sit down and reflect. And God gives me messages. It is an amazing thing. It's like a miracle to me, you know? That I would want to say, why am I feeling like this to him? But I'm not saying it. I'm just sitting down and reflecting. I don't want to feel like this, etc. God tells me what's wrong with me. Now, if this isn't a miracle, I can't tell you what it is. You know, I can't say it's late. It's never too late. Even if I'm 76 years old, I can still learn about God because I believe in the afterlife. So this is my personal, there's much more, but my personal thing is that we can always learn. And by that learning, we can share. You know, and UPF was the just right thing for me. Not Christian, not Muslim, not anything, you know, but for God and the world, you know. I feel that I know something from Christianity, from Islam, everywhere. So for lateness, I know, for the world it's late. But imagine, if I'm one person, I could do so much in the short time that I've known about God, between 33 and now. So we can all do very much if we understand God. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Costas, I would say, earlier I did put a little plug in for conscientious people, right? So that was kind of what I'm thinking of. Maybe that's your idea of intention. It's the kind of, even Father Moon, you know, counted Socrates as one of the great religious founders of the world, highest spiritual people, you know, always amongst those, you know, 4 or 5. Interesting, isn't it? Yes, because of the contribution to human thought and life as well. So yes, where do you want to take this, Margaret? Because time is.
We have to go, yeah. To stop. We have to stop and go to next one.
One line.
Oh, sure.
This is my business partner, Marianne. I woke up fuming this morning. I've been a Christian since the age of 10, but I was fuming this morning because of a business transaction.
What?
A business transaction.
I see.
I hadn't heard anything about it, and I woke up fuming with her. And I thought, I always get up every morning and I read the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, so I read it as usual. And then I had an epiphany. Something said to me, go to Proverbs chapter 4, verse 6. I thought, oh, here we go. It was just something that came into my head. I went to Proverbs chapter 4, verse 6, and it said, love her, forgive her, and she will keep you. That was weird, and I showed you, did I not? It was just amazing that I should get that thought, that, you know,
That's
peace.
closest to God.
Yes, and like you're saying,
Yeah.
something happened to you.
Yeah.
Something
And I
just
thought
hit,
of him, yeah.
just hit you. And I've never not believed, but what happened this morning was truly a revelation. Love, peace and love,
very happy
and
for
the
you.
faith in God
Amen.
keep you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
What shall we do now? Shall
Yes.
we, because there are some people going to places, so maybe we can continue. Do you people want tea, water or something? I can give you outside. So can you continue, or do you want to jump up and down a little bit? Huh? Can you continue for the next one? Yeah, okay. That's better. But if you want to, there's toilets upstairs. You don't have to go all the way down. And if you want to have a drink, I can give you. Okay, thank you. And soon after we'll have lunch anyway. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you all for your contributions. If you feel a little dissatisfied because you couldn't say or you couldn't fully discuss, use the time that we have over lunch, but also, remind yourself that this is just a very basic introduction, right? So if it gets you stimulated and thinking and wanting to ask more, then that's really, it's doing its job actually, right? we have longer programs that you can come to, even weekends. We've got a weekend coming up in Holland, which we can invite you to. So, wonderful. Okay, so I think I'm straight into number 2. Is that right? Yeah? And we'll finish what? At 1? Is that okay?
Just before 1.
Just before 1, and you have one presentation to give.
Yeah.
Yes. Everybody's happy with that? I see eyes. Yeah. Good, good, good. Wow, you are... I admire you very much for sitting and listening to this. Great. So this is... Wow, straight in with part 2. Well, it's a little bit of a cheeky title. I said, love lies at the root of conflict. So that's a bit of a mystery, isn't it? But perhaps you can already discern from what I said when I said there is love and there is love. You know, it's more to do with how love is not true love very often. And there is conflict arising from that. So this is where we look, initially a little bit at the reality. We've talked about an ideal or something to aim for, or understanding what's there in the kind of original plan and purpose for human beings, centering on love that originates from our Creator. The situation of our world, as you know, is tragically different from that. It's a world of conflict, and if you're like me, you're a little bit drawn to, following those latest news stories more often than one is good for one's own health, really. But, we just know it's our brothers and sisters. It could be me involved in that kind of conflict, or my family, so I need to know what's going on. So reality is, yes, it's tragically different, but even that tragedy is not universal. Many people who are striving and sometimes succeeding to live very happy and successful lives and loving lives. So I'm always amazed at the resilience of human beings to keep going and to create something good despite other difficulties. Our society, largely, it works. I know the headlines are often, this is broken and that is broken, but, so much works amazingly well, right? And we should be very thankful. And there's a strong kind of undercurrent in this society in particular about, which is moral and ethical and, which is really upholding many important values. Here again is another quotation from the founder himself. This is back in the 1970s. He's talking about us having 2 purposes in life. We have 2 purposes in our life. Of course, you may say we have many, many more purposes, but fundamental ones. One is the purpose of our own lives. The other is the purpose of our lives in relation to others, to our family, our nation, or indeed the whole world. There must be balance. If too much stress is placed on individualism, then collective virtues are lost. Love of the nation, brotherhood of the people, family integrity, relationships between parents and children, and finally, even the value of individuals themselves get lost. So there has to be the balance here, he is saying, between the purpose of the individual and the purpose of the whole, as we can call it, or in relation to others. So peace very much requires this living for the sake of others, or living for others. And that itself is based on the pair system which we looked at, that kind of principle. But I exist to benefit the whole. That's part of my reason for being here, is to benefit things outside of myself. It's like a higher purpose in life, and each of us has that, actually, whether we concentrate on that so much or not. So the individual is part of the whole, as in this diagram, right? And the individual lives for the sake of the whole, then naturally what we see is that the whole supports the individual, and somewhere is there to ensure that we're not left out or we're not suffering. Just as if you are living really for a group of, say, 10 friends that you have, and you really, you gave a altruistic, true, genuine love to these people. You were there when they needed. And then when you run into some difficulty, do you think they all disappear? No, they'll immediately come and help you, right? Because that's a natural response. And it's like the whole is living for you in that case. So the cause of conflicts comes when this is upset, this balance is not there, or this harmonious relationship is not there. If we're self-centered, just the fact of being self-centered, concerned about myself as the number one major, thing, it means I have less regard for the higher purpose. I'm not thinking of others. I'm using that mental and emotional energy for my own benefit, supposedly. And I'm thinking then even that others exist for my benefit. And this diminishes or ignores the value of the whole. So it means I see myself a little bit as separate from the whole, as I'm giving myself some undue prominence in terms of importance, and I expect the whole to live for me. So this kind of mentality is counterproductive, actually, and it's against this fundamental principle which operates in the universe. And it's seen in such ideologies as communism or Marxist-Leninism. These are developed along these lines. As Father Moon says, he was a great, contributor of the kind of downfall of communism, actually, whether you know that or not. He developed, based on these unification principles, a critique and counter-proposal to Marxist-Leninism that was taught all around the world. He made for himself the kind of role of number one enemy of communists. That's why a lot of rumors and a lot of unpleasant things were directed towards him. But he sought to expose its fallacies, right? So it was largely an exercise in terms of thought and ideals, as we've been talking about. He said here, back in the 70s, according to the logic of communism, there will be constant struggles as long as there are classes of people. We have this today through our kind of division into groups. This is cultural Marxism at work, whether you're aware of it or not. It's under another name, or it's, and given a very compassionate face, but it's giving kind of rise to set one group against another, victim and oppressor in all levels of society. In our ideology, that means UPF ideology, there are no class differences, but only family relationships. You've already caught that, I'm sure, right? Here there is no discrimination. There are no people above or below, but only the relationship between parents and children, providing order in the family. According to communist ideology, mine is mine and yours is mine. On our part, we must think mine is yours and yours is the nation's, and the nation's is the world's, and the world's is God's, and God's is mine. So it's a much bigger, all-embracing circle. Are you with me? Yes. It's a different mindset, actually. The spirit of unificationism must be greater than the power of communism. In practice, in hope, and in ideals, in these three areas. So that shows that, the work that he was doing in his life was deadly serious work, right? And it, put his life at risk many times, but he was ready to do that. And I think the fullness of this truth and his life experience and teaching hasn't really been revealed to the world yet, or hasn't been accepted by the world yet, right? It's quite extraordinary. And, history will verify all of this, I'm sure. So what is the reality of human nature now? We talked about the ideal, or something very beautiful, when we were in the first presentation, but the reality is that our selfish nature as human beings is quite well developed. Even people tend to say, if somebody acts very selfishly or greedily, have you heard someone say, oh, that's just human nature? No. The principle, unification principle, is saying no, that's not original human nature. That may be the nature that they're exhibiting, but this isn't how it should be. It isn't the potential that human beings have. So, that difference is important. Selfish nature is, relatively well developed in many people. But the original nature, this is largely undeveloped to different degrees in different people. They will have a very strong original nature and a small selfish nature, but others might be the reverse. So there's this idea, and it goes throughout religion, that there's a conflicted self, and I'm sure through other philosophies as well. It's, there's some kind of point of contention within the individual, and anything that's created for a good and harmonious purpose won't have that kind of inherent contradiction. It doesn't make sense. But if you look at some of these traditions, as in Sikhism, it says, whoever proclaims himself good, no, goodness approaches him not. And that's the kind of arrogance of somebody who's saying, oh, I'm good, the other person is wrong. But, just wait a minute, let's back up there a bit, right? It might be slightly different when it comes to understanding. Or in Hinduism, in the Maitreya Upanishad, it says the mind is twofold, the pure and also the impure. Or, nice to see Native American religions quoted here. This is coming from our World Scripture. World Scripture is a project of UPF to compile quotations from the world's religious traditions on various topics, and it's a kind of comparative text. It's very fascinating, and I commend it to you. But there has a quotation from the Mohawk tradition. It says, every person has both a bad heart and a good heart. Yeah, how true is that, right? Yeah. And you have in Christianity, St. Paul, a very saintly person, obviously, I'm sure a very righteous and godly person, no doubt. But he lamented, especially in the 7th chapter of Romans, he's saying, I do not do the good that I want, but the evil I do not want is what I do, Like, what's going on, Even what I want to do, I find it difficult. And, I find myself doing things, perhaps in relationship to other people, hurting somebody, and I didn't want to do that, but I did it. I'm putting myself first before somebody else. Or something was troubling him. My guess is it wasn't so bad, right? But the more saintly you are, the more acute you feel these things, right? If you live a real life of prayer as a monk or a nun, you start to take off these kind of layers of your heart, right? And you think you're okay. That's a danger signal again in the life of religion, isn't it? I think I'm fine. But then a little more prayer, a little more work, comparing oneself to one's kind of religious founder or teacher, and you realize, no, I've still got a way to go. There's something there that's blocking me. There's something there which comes out when I don't want it to, and then it bugs me for a few days because I was angry at that person and I shouldn't have been, And, the more the higher the spiritual level of a person, the more these little things really bug them, and they don't know how to get rid of this. And I think St. Paul was something like that. So I looked for a photo of a person with the most conflicted face I could find, right? I don't know who this person is, right? But he looks a little conflicted to me. So some of his thoughts are drawn in an evil direction, selfish thoughts, words, actions. That's where the kind of body is immediately dominating. It's saying, do this for your comfort, for your pleasure, for your kind of, just quality of life, and disregard somebody else. But the same person has kind of thoughts which tend toward goodness, unselfish thoughts, words, and actions. So this is where the original mind, or we can also use a term like conscience, it's there, it's leading him in a different direction. So there's a tug of war going on, right?
Yeah.
Has anybody here ever experienced that, or is it only me? It's not only me then. That I'm relieved. Thank you very much. So that's why we call it the human condition. In religious thought is often referred to that way, the human condition. This is where we're at, and we shouldn't be.
No.
I mean, the fact that we can recognize it means already, it's not original. We know that it shouldn't be like that, but we don't know quite the way out of that. Right? Well, this is why, again, some recourse to religious discipline is very good. There's a battle going on in the mind of each person, and it manifests as conflicts in the kind of wider circle, in the family initially, that's where it comes from. In society and, even in the world, it takes shape as kind of group fighting group. So origin of conflict, there are clues to the origin of this kind of conflicted self in many of the traditional stories around the world. They are often myths containing, as myths do, some very profound insights, right? In a kind of story form or a kind of allegory form. And there's intuition there about the human condition, and they're surprisingly universal, these stories. Let me put up a few interreligious quotations, or religious quotations, right? Again, for this point. This is the Uttaranga Sutram. This is from Jainism. It's better to die than to indulge in partaking of forbidden lustful pleasure. That's pretty strong, isn't it? I think that qualifies as strong. Right? And these all are to point to our kind of topic of contention, if you like, which is the impact of sexual immorality on human relationships. Here in the Dhammapada of Buddhism, the man who goes to the wife of another digs up the very roots of life. The very roots of life are dug up through that kind of action. Or in the Holy Quran, do not come near adultery, for it is a shameful deed and evil, opening the road to other evils. So it's some kind of root again. Interesting, isn't it? A lot of similarities here. In St. Paul, again, we mentioned him, flee from sexual immorality. Don't have anything to do with it. Why? He who sins sexually sins against his own body. This is like the temple of God that you are given, and if you defile that, it's no good as a temple. God's Spirit is not going to be there. No matter how much you want it or feel that, why doesn't God come to me? Why don't I feel God? Well, if your holy place is not a holy place, how can the Holy One live there or be present there? So, this is his advice. In Judaism, you have insight into that kind of Genesis story. What was the wicked serpent contemplating at that time? He thought, I shall go and kill Adam and wed his wife. This is talking about the fallen archangel, Lucifer, the serpent, and Adam and Eve, the first ancestors. I shall go and kill Adam and wed his wife, and I shall be king over the whole world. In other words, I'll take that kind of position away from human beings, and I will be the kind of God of this world, as one of the phrases that Jesus used about the devil. Right? You are God of this world. Here in Hinduism, in the Mahabharata, it says, formerly, all creatures were virtuous, and by themselves they obtained divinity. So it's talking about some kind of former age or original age. Then women who had been virtuous became wicked witches. Sorry, women, I'm just quoting here. And Brahma filled them with wanton desires, which they in turn inspired in men. He created anger, and henceforth all creatures were born in the power of desire and anger. So, again, you can feel how it's trying to get to an explanation, isn't it? I remember the first time my first daughter, eldest daughter, she said, hearing something on the news, and she said, why do those wicked people do that, I felt pained, because you have to then admit to your pure, innocent, child, yes, the world is not what we'd like it to be, right? People do bad things, and it's very, very tragic, So I always feel these stories a little bit like answers to children. The children are asking these questions, Why do those people, hate us so much? Well, we have to kind of give some explanation. So of course, it's painting a picture around it. And here in the Holy Quran, it says, "O children of Adam, let not Satan seduce you in the same manner as he got your parents out of the garden, stripping them of their clothing in order to expose their private parts." Curious. And in Sikhism, sexual desire is the window, pain and pleasure are the gatekeepers, virtue and sin are the gates. So it's a kind of, which is it going to be, right? Which is your entry portal there, right? Curious, isn't it, right? But there's a common theme emerging. And if we go back for a very, it's an example that Father Moon in his research and teaching used very often. So I'm going to look at the Jewish Judeo-Christian story, which is there in the beginning of the first book of the Old Testament, of the Jewish Torah. It's the Genesis story of the human fall, where it talks about our first ancestors in the center of the garden. It's a beautiful, idyllic place. They are told they can eat of any of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil they shall not eat. For in the day that they eat of it, they will die. It's a very strong prohibition to eating this fruit. And there have been debates down through history. What is this fruit? Right? Well, I'm not going to go through all the theological arguments. You'll be happy to know, right? But the conclusion, Father Moon's conclusion, his insight, in a way it's like something which the religious world knew, but also didn't fully know or fully put its weight behind. Shall I say that? That is, he said, because the commandment is like, if you eat of this, you will die. It's an allegory. It's talking about the misuse of love itself. So the fruit that's referred to, it's not a test of obedience. It's more desirable than life itself because it's there to kind of reach the ideal, and it's portrayed as being very essential to life's, fulfilling life's goals. So his profound insight was that this fruit is love itself, especially the holy husband-wife relationship. So if you misuse that, then other things, other consequences, very bad consequences come from that, right? So in a way, like I say, the religious world has known this, but still there are many who just think of this maybe as a literal fruit or as a test or something like that. But the consequences are so serious and bring about this conflicted situation in individuals, right? Of course, it's more than just a sexual relationship. It's love itself becoming impure and self-centered and therefore self-serving, and it's making this kind of contradiction between within the individual that then gets applied to relationships around oneself. So to say it's love itself, yes, actually, when you look back at Holy Scripture, well, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, it's an unusual title for a tree, isn't it? But elsewhere in biblical language, to know means to have sexual relationships, right? It occurs always in the little primary school nativity plays that children do in the Christian tradition, right? This line is said by little kind of 4 or 5 years old children, Joseph was betrothed to Mary, but he did not know her. Right? So they all say that, right? What are they talking about? They don't know what they're talking about, really. They're too young, right? And he's, of course he knew her, but they didn't have any sexual relationship, right? They were betrothed and they had no sexual relationship, right? So that's what it's a euphemism. It's a kind of, not in front of the children kind of thing, right? To know. And to bear fruit, yes, this is to produce a result that's passed on through the lineage. It's the most precious fruit of this precious aspect of love, is to have children, is to continue the lineage, right? Are you with me? So, I'm not saying this to convince you of anything. It's just that I want you to grasp why in his understanding, Father Moon zeroes in on this aspect of love, true love and false love, and how to unravel that knot and establish traditions of true love at every level of society and human relationships. So this means that for our first human ancestors in this story, they're growing to their perfection. They're like in the process of making that first foundation of peace that we talked about, or first blessing, but they're not there yet. They're not mature yet, and yet they get persuaded to enter into premature sexual relationship between the two of them, and Archangel Lucifer has such a relationship with Eve. So there's a two-stage process to this contamination of love in human beings. And that gets passed on, because that can be passed on, right? If you don't have an example of true love in your parents, how are you ever going to learn, right? And, so they're given a commandment, do not eat of that fruit, during that time of their growing period, because we need to mature to a certain level to be able to handle love. Love needs a certain level of maturity and personal control and self-discipline, and we need to understand its purpose and its function. This intimate sexual relationship between husband and wife should be within the marriage context, and then it makes so much sense. And then, in a way, they would be free to eat. So what comes first is a growth to spiritual maturity, right? And then on that basis, you can enter into your second foundation of peace or marriage blessing, and then have a good example to share with children. As it is, many people bring their immature love, their self-centered love, into a married relationship. So the marriage may be rosy to begin with, but after a time, that self-centeredness becomes apparent, right? And, especially if the husband or the wife strays and has a relationship outside of that marriage, which they don't want their partner to know about, already that foundation of trust and love is undermined and problems ensue, right? We know it. But this is where it comes from. It's very, very fundamental, Father Moon was saying, in human history. It goes right back to the beginning. So we haven't learnt to perfect our love and pass on love in its true and altruistic form. Are you with me, everybody? So, wow, I'm condensing a lot here, but at the same time, I don't want to skimp on certain things because it sounds a bit superficial if I do. But if it leaves you with questions, I quite understand, and we can go into those in more detail. So here, again, to go back to the founder's own words, he said, what is the reality of our world today? The disorder and sickness of every kind, including war, violence, and drug abuse that have infected humankind. More important, the rapid collapse of sexual morality among the young, the increasing divorce rate, the breakdown of the family are all destroying the foundation of human society. All these things originate from the fall. That's where it's coming from this kind of start of human history. So do you remember my definition of true, genuine love? Do you remember what that was?
It was the happiness of the other people.
Exactly. Say it again. Selfless, yes. In fact, here to see it again, it's unconditionally caring about the happiness of another person. Right? So what is false love? Love and love. True love, genuine love, but there's also false love, which is largely what is experienced by the majority of people, right? False love is, I care how you make me feel. Already you can see how there's something inherently self-concerned or self-centered about that, isn't it, right? I care how you make me feel. As long as you make me feel good, I love you. As soon as I don't get that, I don't love you anymore, right? I'll love somebody else. And so people get into serial relationships like this because they love the kind of fact of falling in love. It feels wonderful. But when that kind of tires a little bit, and because they have the wrong expectation or wrong understanding or wrong practice of love, then they look somewhere else. They want to recreate that. So we don't question this enough in our society. We feel it's kind of the alternative is something very prudish or very, restrictive. But no, the point, and this is what we are doing when we're teaching our young people within the unification movement, is saying, no, it's because of the importance and preciousness of love itself. We need to learn how to love in a true way, right? Because in the end, all the happiness will be yours. And you'll avoid a lot of the heartaches and a lot of the difficulties and a lot of the pain that people associate with love, right? So, you all listen to, well, maybe you don't all listen to pop music or, popular music. Anybody do that here? You know what the lyrics are about, right? It's all about this kind of pain of love or being cheated in love or somebody, I loved you and you let me down and was that somebody else I saw you with last night? And, it's just kind of, because it resonates with people's hearts that they like to hear this. And when they're feeling down and let down, then they put on that record and they listen and they cry along with it, right? Because it's all about, I care how you make me feel. No, this is twisted, actually. This is twisted around. Of course, I'm talking about Father Moon's thought, but I have a quotation from you from a different source, because I think it helps to illustrate and show that we're not talking in a vacuum here. This is a very great spiritual teacher, Eckhart Tolle. I don't know if you come across him. I recommend it. In his book, A New Earth, Create a Better Life, he says there, what is commonly called falling in love is in most cases, sometimes it's very pure and beautiful. Absolutely, right? And if that happened to you, I'm so happy, right? But in most cases, it's an intensification of self-centered wanting and needing. You become addicted to another person, or rather your image of that person. It has nothing to do with true love, which contains no wanting whatsoever. I'm not seeking this for a need in myself, right? I'm seeking to give happiness. I'm caring about the happiness of the other, and in the process, I find my own happiness. Right? So this is why love has to be enacted this way. So much of religious tradition in particular, and other insights like this, person Eckhart Tolle is pointing out, that we have to separate out this ego and get rid of this ego, and we have to love in a pure and altruistic way, right? And that's the challenge, right? But there lies the real benefits. So we talked about 3 foundations of peace before, right? Individual peace, be fruitful. Peace in the family, and then through that in society as a kind of unit or building block of a kingdom of heaven or ideal world. And that's multiply in that 3 blessings. And then universal peace is to have the right kind of dominion, responsible stewardship and ownership of the natural world, including pursuing scientific development for the benefit of everybody, mastering your own kind of area of contribution to society through your career and through your creative skills and these kind of things. Everything's contained in that 3rd foundation of peace. So I often say to especially younger audiences, what do you want for your happiness that is not there? And I haven't heard anybody come up with an answer yet, right? What do you want for your happiness that isn't somewhere in there? That's why I don't think of it myself as religious doctrine. It's much more fundamental. It's life, right? It's life itself. This is the blessing of life. And yet many people even maybe right now, somebody's committing suicide. They're ending their life because they don't know any meaning in life. They don't have any purpose in life. They don't, they feel it's better to die than just carry on living in this world. It's very tragic, right? So we need to understand this because it's a key for our happiness. However, these became corrupted, and I talked about the kind of misuse or misapplication of love there. First of all, mind-body conflict. There's some evil influence there which sets mind and body against each other, or body as subject over the mind as object, which is not how it should be. So dominated by my physical desires, by the me or ego aspect of myself. So much of religion is actually to make the body obey the mind. It's a kind of pathway to do that. If taken seriously, it's not really, in my mind, about believing certain things. Just believing certain things won't bring you enlightenment or salvation. That's just an idea. But you have to practice this in your life. And the second foundation got corrupted through conflicts in society and wars, this manifestation of the conflict in the individual and the self-centered desires of individuals, often working together. And then you have a kind of corruption of that third foundation of peace through environmental damage or using the product of our scientific development for means which are, to the detriment of human society, or for the kind of collapse of our culture, or for the undermining of what is good. So, yes, we have to rethink that. So, interestingly, and this is Father Moon's kind of the final insight, which I'll share, when he looks at this story, yes, it's looking at a story and others, because he researched very deeply other religious traditions as well. And, for example, I found out that when he was wrongly imprisoned in America for trumped-up tax charges, it was a total, unfabricated accusations, yes. But he served out his prison sentence. Apparently, while in prison there, he read the Holy Quran twice. Completely, right? Interesting. Just a little aside there, but his understanding that came through this, he had to fight for these insights and revelation and check them always, before God in prayer. Is this right? Is this right? Have I understood? Really, and sometimes being denied until he could absolutely be sure and stake his life on it. That, we've inherited from the very beginning certain aspects, what we call fallen nature. It has 4 aspects to it. The first that comes out of this story is not loving others as God loves them, or not taking God's standpoint in loving others, or seeing situations as God sees them. That was the first. Wow. The second, he found, was neglecting our own responsibility and seeking a position and role that rightfully belongs to others. So, contained in this is things like jealousy, comparing ourselves to somebody else, wishing, we had a position that somebody else didn't. And as soon as your mind is occupied with that, you're not thinking about what you should be thinking. So you're neglecting your own responsibility. Are you with me? Yeah. And then the third, seeking to dominate others whom we should respect and cooperate with. This is the kind of thinking that my opinion is more important than anybody else's, and I have it right, and you have to listen to me. Behaving unrighteously, and therefore disrupting the proper order. The last one is seeking to justify one's own wrongdoings and to shift the blame to encourage others to join in the same evil behavior. Now we have whole ideologies, in the 20th century which justify this and incorporate this as a kind of, give justification to it. But this is, I know I say to people, a little jokingly, this is not poetry, right? So, yeah, but it's so insightful that, a lot of what is taught in religious traditions about sin or evil. It's expressed in concepts, isn't it? Like lust or greed or anger or sloth. You know, these kind of traditional things. If you're Taoist, it might be obsequiousness or something like that. There's a whole list of concepts. And it's largely taught through stories because those as dictionary definitions don't mean anything really. But this gets under the skin of that. This is what gives rise to lust, what gives rise to unrighteous anger, what gives rise to greed, and this is it. It's these kind of little initial twistings which we can actually easily succumb to if we're not aware. And now having given you this, you might see it everywhere, right? But in a true, genuine religious tradition, you should not just point the finger. The purpose of this is, first of all, to see it in whom? Myself. In myself, exactly, right? So I have to see it in myself, first of all. But also, coincidentally, you will see, in the kind of stories which go, the leaking of things which are not true in the press by somebody to pull somebody down or try and get their job or get them, all this kind of stuff that goes on in our society. It's all traces back to this. It's understanding these aspects of fallen nature and how to overcome them. Okay, I think I've said enough for the second one. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening, and I'm going to close there. Is this helpful to you?
Yes.
I hope it is. I hope it is. I mean,
Can you sit down?
yeah.
Please sit
Where are you?
down. Please sit down because your legs. We're going to have questions, but two of our distinguished guests are leaving to another meeting. So I would like to give Kaya. Can you start that?
He's sleeping now.
No, I don't want to be late. They came late. You should stay. I am Mama.
I don't think he has any choice.
What choice?
He was seeing the call.
This one. Okay. No, no, can you put it off? Okay, I would like to invite. Okay, let's talk about why we give this first of all. We have Ambassador of Peace Awards given to people who want to do something good for others. Oh my God, that's wrong.
Sorry.
We actually give Ambassador for Peace Awards to people who really want to do good beyond themselves, beyond their families, and want to really help for a better world as we're hearing it. And we have chosen a few today, but it's going to be after lunch. But right now, I would like to invite Kia. And can you say what it's read, please? Oh, you don't have glasses. Okay.
Actually, I left my glasses at the back.
But you sit down, please.
No.
Oh, no.
So this is the Ambassador for Peace Award, which is going to be given, first of all, to Kaya Prasad. This is what it says. So you have to assent to this. You have to be happy. You have to be happy with this. You have to be. So, Ambassador for Peace. The Universal Peace Federation acknowledges as ambassadors for peace those individuals whose lives exemplify the ideal of living for the sake of others and who dedicate themselves to practices which promote universal moral values, strong family life, interreligious cooperation, international harmony, renewal of the United Nations, a responsible public media, and the establishment of a culture of peace. Transcending racial, national, and religious barriers, the ambassadors for peace contribute to the fulfillment of the hope of all ages, a unified world of peace wherein the spiritual and material dimensions of life are harmonized. Wow. If you agree with that, give it some applause, I would say.
Kaya? Is it Kaya? Prasad, I know. Kaya or not Kaya. Kaya Prasad, because I know many Kayas. And she's awarded internationally with CFONHS. What's that? Conservative. Yes, okay, sorry. Conservative Friends of NHS, a Star Award, and Best Ward Administrator for Clinical Hematology at UCLA, LH. Working closely with the government as the Government Secretary of Conservative Friends of NHS and also the Ambassador of Hematology Cancer Care, wow, where she contributes towards fundraising and spreading love and peace in NHS. She's also a certified first and mental health champion. I mean, she's a lot of things, and if you're working with NHS, you're already helping people. Doesn't she deserve it? Let's give her a clap. Raymond, what are we doing?
My camera's next to me.
He's very good. Thank you. Yes. Thanks. Of course. Oh my God, I'm trying to find it. I'm sorry, I didn't know that I had to read it now, so I'm not prepared. But yeah, okay, because of the Mandela and the other one.
Just, I know Nick Karim is a wonderful peace activist. Sorry, we're getting twisted here. Oh, I know. I saw your LinkedIn, but actually, for a long time he was promoting a play going around the world about Anne Frank, even though he's not from the Jewish community. But he was promoting the understanding of the value of human rights and countering genocide. And also he's got a peace organization. I'm sorry, you have to tell me the name, but Blue Sky Network, thank you. But one project he has coming up on the 18th is to promote a book of welcome messages, which are tributes to Nelson Mandela, which were written in the tribute book of the House of Commons, I believe, held by the Speaker.
Can I just explain a little bit about it?
Sure. And there's 800 world figures.
I actually had this event in my diary, and because I'm organising this Nelson Mandela Day event at the Waldorf Hilton on the 18th, it came up, I've got to be here on my diary. So I rushed out so quickly, put my trousers on, forgot to put my belt on. So as I was coming through Lancaster Gate, you know, the checkout, my trousers fell down. And I tell you what, you know, it was a moment that I will never forget.
But you still came.
Yeah, I still came because I'm really honoured to be here because I think this is an extraordinary organisation. I normally don't attend award ceremonies because they tend to be very superficial, some of them,
Yeah.
but this is a very genuine one. So I decided this is an honor for me to accept this award, and I'm grateful for Naveen for nominating me. And I think it's important that organizations such as yours continues to prosper and deserves the support that I, in my work, can give you. As for the Mandela book, on the 18th of July, we've got this special event coming up to celebrate the 24th year of the book, which I started with the permission of the House of Commons Speaker, the wonderful Betty Boothroyd, Baroness, who's recently passed away, and I became great friends with her over the years. And I wanted to do something special to recognize this 20th century hero. So I came up with this idea of doing a House of Commons book. I've collected over 700 handwritten messages in it, everybody from Barack Obama to Maya Angelou. I was with Barack Obama on the stage when he announced that he was running for the president of the US in 2007 at Chicago University. I came on the stage with him, and everyone was wondering, well, that's Senator Obama, that's Michelle Obama, but who's that guy? So I had to tell the governor of Illinois when he turned around to me and he said, excuse me, but who are you? So I said, I'm here to support the man that's going to be the first Afro-Caribbean president of the United States of America. As for the Anne Frank story, I met Eva Sloss in 1997. She's a remarkable woman. She survived Auschwitz. She lost most of her family in Auschwitz. And there was a play written about her by a very famous US writer. And I saw it in 1998 when I did the Anne Frank Declaration at the UN. Went to see it, and I said, this play needs to be shown everywhere. Taking it all over the world from China. But my greatest thing was to take it and show it in the very prison that Nelson Mandela was in, Robben Island, because he was a fan of the diary. And I think this is a story that needs to resonate everywhere, because as Pastor Martin Neumeier said, you know, obviously Pastor Martin Neumeier, he was a
Protestant.
Protestant, Protestant who first supported Adolf Hitler, then he turned against him, and he coined a fantastic saying about then they came for me. So in the Bible it says, I am my brother's keeper. So this play, this Pastor Martin Neumeier's famous poem is about, you know, if you don't stand up for others, and then they will come for you. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak up because I was not a Jew. They came for the Catholics, and I did not speak up because I was not a Catholic. They came for the trade unionists because I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. So that's why organizations such as yours, you speak out for the weak and the vulnerable. And I will do everything I can to continue to help you, Margaret. You're doing an extraordinary job. And again, I thank my dear friend Naveen and Kia for their support and the work that they do to make our world a better place. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then you can read later. Naveen, Naveen. You come, please. I want to should have been with you as well, sorry. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Sure.
The Speaker of the House of Commons.
Whereabouts is that?
It's at the Waldorf Hilton in Yorkbridge.
Oh, Oldwich, yeah.
Lots of great people are going to be there. Written messages in the book. Starts at, well, there's an award ceremony at 5:30, and the main event starts at 7 o'clock. Lots of great people are going to be there. So.
Okay. We have to go to conservative campaign. Yay.
Phone and owner have parted company. If you can help. Thank you. Margaret, you want to announce now?
I'm not sure what to do.
No, there's no space. I just don't want it to leave back.
Okay, is it lunchtime now?
Yeah, lunch is there, I think. But if anybody that's not hurrying up has something to say, I think you can say it now. Did you like the second one? The second, yeah? What did you like about it? Can somebody say, it's finished now, we have to finish. We want to, questions?
No, it's not a question. The
Comment.
You said what did we like the most? It shortens the quest of life who we are, the know thyself. It's just lovely, the distillation, instead of doing all the search yourself, you're just leveraging on the people who went through all this search. But again, it's not just to understanding intellectually,
To act.
logically, but intuitively. Does this model suits me? Some people would just want just a religion, some they would just want that. So very grateful, and we need to know more what courses you run and things you do. So,
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry that you didn't give the thing. But anybody else have anything to say before we eat? Would you like to say something? It doesn't matter. Who doesn't want to say, please stand up. Come on. The lady who got the Bible reading this morning. How did you find it?
Well, I was very pleased to come today and hear your version of things, which turns the mind into realizing what you already knew but haven't heard before. And so it was very good to hear other people's expression of the reality of life. And thank you for
And
that.
we find that we all kind of equal. We're kind of, everybody's saying the same thing.
Yes.
Even all religions, all the scriptures. It's so amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
So we just all have to follow. Quickly, no.
I've come to realize
Come.
today,
'Cause it's
and I'm a member of lots of different groups, some are really superficial and some are really meaningful. There are a few that you come along to and you wait to hear someone speak. And like this gentleman today, I was captivated by your literature and your passion and desire. Thank you.
David Hanna. Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I wanted to thanks for everyone that make this event very successful, and congratulations. My question is basically to my own this organization, because I'm part of this and as well. One side, we consider that at the moment we are and our youth are away from the religions. Family systems broken. So we are working to fix it. But if you see, the old politicians are another hand. They are making a new laws, even not in the United Kingdom, not in the America, not in the Europe, even to our back home countries as well. Today promoting some things which I don't want to even mention, that certain names, especially like a pride. So why this differences? And when we have to make and take proper step to take these politicians to bring on this stage, to fix this distance what we have and difference what we have in this one. Thank you.
I will announce you as campaign organizer. No, you know, because we are here, you can say it later, because now we have to eat and come back on the next time. Please, you don't mind. Next time you can say. Because now the food is late and we have to take it down and up and all that. Now, what I want to say is go outside, and Tina Coombs, she's our lovely trustee of UPF, and she's been quite responsible for bringing some food. She will tell you what to take, not to take, which is with vegetarian, but do have anybody who's vegetarian, do go and have it yourself in the beginning, yeah. But the non-vegetarians, you could probably go, and the non-vegetarians have something from the sushi on their plate, and then later on you can get whatever, sandwiches and salads. Okay, she will tell you. Follow the leader. Bye.
I'll tell you according to Mrs. Ali's instructions.
Come on, let's go.
Thank you.
David, can I make you a plate? You want to make it?
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Everybody enjoy lunch? Very good. So, let's give a big round of applause for Margaret Ali.
Okay, everyone, this is a serious moment. This is the last session. Now you go home with these lovely thoughts and really put yourself in the position of God. God needs you. One thing I learned when I was young spiritually, that, oh, sorry. Hello. Yeah, that's all right. What I learned when I was young spiritually is that, you know, God needs you. I'm thinking, me? Who am I? You know, who am I that God needs me? That's not the point. The point is there is no other Margaret, there is no other Madeline, there's no other Bianca, there's no other anybody. So therefore, we have something we can give God, you know. So it's so good to give this offering to God and feel energized, you know. You know, I am 76 and I'm a bit tired. I had 3 hours of sleep, but I get so energized when I'm doing things with God and with people like you, good people. Let's do it. Listen well. And if anybody wants to have a little bit of conversation later, I promised you, they can do it. But if they want to go, they can go. So here we go. We have to invite this amazing man, David Hanna. and I have some ambassadors of peace, you know, later. Awards.
Oh dear. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, everybody, and welcome back. Yes, I want to continue on just to perhaps give a little more hopeful presentation compared to the last one, which was analyzing the problem and taking that in perhaps new directions. Although somebody said to me, or our sister over here mentioned that it was kind of putting a new voice to certain things which you knew or had heard other places or used to hearing in a different way. And when I first heard Father Moon's teaching, well, I was architecture student back in Bristol. I was 20 years old. But when I first heard it, I can only describe it this way. You know when you wake up in the morning and you've had a really good dream, but you just can't remember it. You're kind of, all day you're thinking, what was that? You know, so when I heard it, it was like hearing a almost half-forgotten dream. Like I knew it, but I couldn't have voiced it. And I think that's because this is universal truth. It's in ourselves, actually. It's something very, very profound, and it speaks to the core of our identity, our spirit, our heart. And yes, that's what resonates with us. I hope it's doing that for you. So it's almost like remembering a half-forgotten dream, something like that. Yes. So, good for a half-day seminar, isn't it?
Yes, so, fantastic.
I could call it next time a half-forgotten dream. Yes, healing and reconciliation toward the ideal. Really, I'm shortening what we'd normally talk about in this whole history of restoration. Can't go into too much of that today, but I do want to connect that kind of first understanding which we laid out, these 3 foundations for peace, with something of the solution which involves certainly the integrity of the individual, but also evaluation of marriage and family and our kind of participation in that. So I do want to mention that. Where does peace begin? I remember a song like that once. Where does peace begin? Even in it's a rather, documents which didn't have religious references in any of them, but at the founding of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, this branch of the UN, in their preamble, it says, "Since wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed."
Amen.
Well, men and women. It's talking about human beings, and it's saying that somewhere these things did start in the mind. We've identified that already, this kind of inner contradiction and this corruption of love itself. So how to restore that? It has to be also, solution has to be related to the problem, right? Like a health cure. You have to analyze the problem and then prescribe a certain cure. So religion itself, why we're kind of emphasizing it, probably here more than we would normally in a regular UPF meeting, but it's for this reason, as Father Moon states, back in 1990, he said, why throughout history have people needed to improve themselves through morals, ethics, and religion? Why should we observe them? It's because we sense something is wrong with us, and we desire to return to our original standing before God. So, again, it's tapping into something which is very universal and something which is, again, it may be, it's there, it's in our kind of intuitive understanding, but it's giving voice to that. And as a restorative vehicle, we have to make changes and reparations. The principle that the unification principle talks about is a principle called indemnity. That certain payment has to be offered, a certain price has to be paid to make the journey back, or the necessary steps back. Something has to be invested, and it's a way of restoring a lost position or status and getting out of our current reality. So we have to go the opposite way to how this problem came about. So that's one good reason for understanding the problem itself, right? And to unravel those, how these things came about. So it needs a conscious effort, we can say, to restore what was lost. And it's taking responsibility to correct misconduct and feel that even though I'm restricted to the now, this the only thing I can influence is the things I'm doing now, the situations I'm faced with, and how to bring a good outcome to those situations. But in doing so, I'm somehow connected to how things have been done, rightly or wrongly, in the past, over and over again, right? So if I choose to do right, what in the past has repeatedly been done wrong, I can set a new pattern for the future that hopefully overcomes those mistakes. So it's going the reverse way to how damage came about. So this is paying some price or some indemnity. And restoration, we use this term, in the more, say a Christian view might call it salvation. But salvation is very much from an individual sinner's point of view, right? Restoration is more from the Creator or God's point of view. It's restoring, it's the same process, but it's restoring what was lost and coming back to that original ideal, which is, again, why we spend time talking about that in the beginning, because we understand that. We know where we want to get to. So restoration is an opportunity to put right past mistakes, right? They will always come along, and sometimes we don't recognize them for what they are. They can pass us by, but every situation in a way is an opportunity to do right what was done wrong in the past. And it's giving into this, giving into the same temptations or the same stock reactions will only continue a destructive pattern. We want to change that. So we make a conscious decision not to go into those old patterns of behavior, and we seek to follow our conscience in this way, rather than repeating mistakes. Where do those mistakes come from? They come from that fallen nature. Do you remember the last slide I shared before lunch? That was a long time ago, wasn't it? Way back in the morning, before all that lovely food. Yeah, we had a slide and it had those 4 aspects of fallen nature, and we talked about those, right? So, rather than repeat those, I have to get out of that pattern. And it's why, this life is a little bit like, it's challenging because it's like trying to swim upstream. The flow of society and the way things happen in the fallen world, it's going a certain direction, and people are very used to doing it that way. But we want to choose a different way. We want to go, like swimming upstream. It takes an extra effort, but it's worth it, right? So we have to consciously do that. If we break some cycle of abuse and the pattern of fallen history, we can start to end it for all time. So until restoration on a particular level is accomplished, these same problems are going to come up and will reoccur. I'm talking in very kind of abstract terms, I know, but I'll try to illustrate that on the 2 examples which might be useful for us. But first of all, let's think about a 2-step process which is needed. And you will find evidence for this in, again, all major religious traditions have something of this there. We need to reconcile with that origin, that source of higher values, or with our God. We need to study Scripture. We need to seek insight and wisdom. And the more we do that, the more kind of inspiration we can get, and we can be led to certain solutions. We need prayer and meditation, which involves some self-reflection, really looking at myself and asking those awkward questions. We have to awaken our conscience, and strive to better ourselves. And many traditions have a practice of confession. Like, this is helpful. It stops the kind of way in which the ego builds up a kind of false picture of myself as I'm better than everybody. If I can confess my mistakes and restore a love for God in this way, I'll find that actually it's not held against me. I'm actually liberated by doing that. And in religious traditions, there have been practice of celibacy on occasion, and poverty, denying material things for the sake of one's faith, and obedience, adhering to certain rules and laws and practices, especially in the kind of tradition of monks and nuns, which occur in many traditions, actually, not just the kind of Christian ones. So that's like putting our vertical relationship right, which has to be the first thing. So we center on God's word and higher values through this self-reflection and awakening our conscience. But then we have to add something to that. You can't have one without the other. There has to be proper order in relationships with others. I have to make sure those are going well and working well. And if there's someone I need to forgive, I need to do that. And if there's somebody who needs to really forgive me, then I have to seek that kind of forgiveness. So success in both areas is needed for us to advance and to move closer to a goal of peace, inner peace, and peace in our relationships, family, society, nation, and world. So reconciling with each other is this important second step, we could say. And we sometimes refer to it as horizontal, meaning it's between people. And the vertical is more thinking, always like God and heaven are up there. Even though we know it's not a physical thing, it's kind of lining ourselves with something which is like an axis for life around which everything can successfully and happily revolve. Here's an interesting quotation from the Holy Quran. It says, "The repayment of a bad action is one equivalent to it, But whoever pardons and makes reconciliation, his reward lies with God. He does not love the unjust, but whoever endures patiently and forgives, that is a sign of real resolve. So it's a nuanced idea, not loving the sin, but really loving the sinner. Here in Matthew, in the Christian New Testament, you have Jesus saying, if you are offering your gift at the altar, you're making some religious devotion, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. So this is saying, get that in order first of all, otherwise you're kind of not being really true and really honest, and you're bringing some problems with you that will make your offering less pure, less genuine. Yeah. And here in the Adi Granth, Sikhism, where there is forgiveness, there is God himself. So forgiveness is extremely important, and if we look at Jesus' central teaching, sometimes it's distilled to this, what he was challenged to talk about, the great commandment, and he gave two. He said the first law is this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind or strength. He's actually quoting Deuteronomy. So it's not words that are new to him. It just means he'd read it, right? He'd studied it. And he had distilled from those books of the Jewish Torah this as being the most important. But he said then, you can't just have that on its own. The second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. So the first is that vertical aspect, right? And the second is this horizontal. You have to sort out these relationships. And you'll find this tradition elsewhere. I mentioned Holy Quran already, but it kind of talks more directly about this in the second surah there. It says, and be steadfast in prayer and regular in charity. So prayer is the kind of vertical aspect. Charity is, expressing love and kindness to your fellow men. And whatever good you send forth for your souls before you, you shall find it with Allah. So that idea is there. So interesting. We have to consider both of these elements when we're seeking to restore and make progress according to our conscience. So already in the earlier second lecture, we talked about this misuse of love, how it's identified there in Father Moon's teaching in the story of Adam and Eve, our first ancestors. So illicit love, they inherited this fallen nature, which then gets passed on and comes down to us. So there is something there which can be passed on in the lineage, if you like. It's some kind of aspect of taking us away from our true humanity, which we have to rediscover. We have to kind of almost evolve into being the true human beings that we always could be, but have never been. Are you with me? Yeah. It's an interesting idea. So I think even you can bring evolution into that if you want. I see that as kind of happening as our next stage, really. Then what is starting as a parent's problem, that means, in their immaturity and misusing love and separated from their relationship with God, then they went on to have children and more children, and they had children, right? This is humankind's lineage. Then the parent's problem gets visited on the next generation, right? So in this, the next story in the Jewish scripture, and it's of course accepted by Christian world as well. So that's a large number of people around the world. Is the Cain and Abel story, and you'll find this in the Holy Quran as well. It's a story of the first murder, essentially, brother killing brother, which is the origin of all conflicts and all wars in the end, it distills down to that, doesn't it? It's brothers killing brothers. It's that which should never happen. And so much in our minds at the moment, I'm sure, is the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And these are brothers. Absolutely. They've regarded themselves, through history as that. It's kind of similar root, but yet, have found such antagonism and such kind of false justification for doing what they're doing. It's very tragic. So, if I can just stay on this story a little bit, I think it's a very good illustrator, this Cain and Abel story, this second generation where the elder brother kills the younger brother and obviously hasn't, had the loving environment that the second blessing should provide and example in the parents. So it has some verse that always fascinates me because it's very profound in kind of psychological terms, right? And this you'll find in Genesis 4. Here is God speaking to Cain. Cain is full of resentment because his offering hasn't been accepted, but his younger brother has had his offering accepted. How galling, how irritating. But somewhere, something is not right in Cain's heart. Maybe even the relationship between the brothers is already problematic. So what does God say? This is the recorded story. Says to Cain, if you do what is right, will you not be accepted? In other words, it's down to you to do what is right, and then I'm here to accept you, right? So in a way, don't worry, don't feel such animosity or anger or, But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door, its desire is for you, but you must master it. So there's some kind of forces wanting to get the better of you and pull you, in a bad direction, but it's up to you to master this. So if Cain can master these feelings and overcome these feelings and think, maybe has to think, why was my brother's offering accepted and mine wasn't? I have to have some prayerful reflection on that. Or go to his brother and say, could you show me how to do this properly? I'm not sure, right? Or had to humble himself in some way. All those kind of solutions which are open to him are getting rid of that fallen nature, right? It's going the opposite way, which is restoration, and it's paying some indemnity in a way because, heartfully, it's difficult to do, right? What does an elder brother always feel to his younger brother? Well, I'm more important than you, right? I'm the eldest. But if he finds himself in that kind of position, he shouldn't take it out on his younger brother. He is, as our friend here who is receiving the award, right? He referenced also from this same story. He said, Cain says, am I my brother's keeper? Like that was his excuse after murdering his brother. Am I the one supposed to be looking after him? I would say to Cain, if I could look him in the face, I say, yes, you are, right? That's what you're supposed to be doing. If you're the elder brother, you should be concerned about your younger brother's well-being. That's part of your job, right? It comes with the territory. So, it's an archetype of conflict here. There's Abel. Abel loved God, but couldn't win the heart of his brother, who was consumed with resentment. And Abel had God's blessing, but he couldn't share it with or help his brother that way. Cain was consumed with resentment over, for him, a perceived injustice from his point of view, right? It was unfair, even though, we can say God is never unfair. There was some reason why his offering was not accepted. And he didn't see his brother from God's point of view. Remember the first aspect of fallen nature? So, he didn't take God's standpoint in loving his brother. That's the problem. And he became jealous. And he became unable to control his anger. It ends in murdering his brother. So this pattern gets repeated and repeated down through history, and it's being done today, wherever there's conflict. We can say what should happen, which is like solution, right? That means Abel is the one to be proven faithful and righteous, so has to make a vertical foundation, and he does successfully. And then Cain has to conquer the fallen nature in himself, has to overcome these tendencies to go down that road. And that is making a horizontal foundation, right? So it's still the same idea. Right there, back in this first story, we've got this idea. Restore the vertical and then restore the horizontal. Are you with me, everybody?
Yes.
Or have you got the post-lunch blues here? Like you're kind of thinking, oh gosh, that was still remembering your lovely strawberries and your, right? Yeah, oh, very good. Okay, so what should happen? Yes, this means Abel has to be humble, being accepted by God. You know, that's not a reason to boast. Forgive and be tolerant in the face of some abuse or some difficulty. He has to serve his brother. Why? To melt his resentment. That's the way. You have to say, no, don't worry so much. I'll help you. And let's do this together. This kind of heart, even coming from a younger brother to an elder brother. We all need kind of education, right? So be ready to help his brother to be successful. What should Cain do? Overcome his resentment and his feelings of rejection, because that again is a very self-centered feeling, isn't it? Why me? Why am I the one who's, not accepted? This is unfair. All this kind of feeling of being wronged oneself. This is not healthy, right? And so he has to recognize his brother's value. He has to rejoice in his brother's success, and then he has to move on from hatred and be ready to reconcile. Now that process was all there in those kind of words that are recorded as coming from God, right? It means, if you do right, will you not be accepted? Right? You just have to do what is right. That's the solution. Much later, I don't have time to go into it today, but much later we see a restoration of this relationship between brothers, really for the first time, and it's in the story of Jacob and Esau. So, and that's important. There are many lessons that we can learn. Of course, humankind has done that for centuries, but there's some new insights from Father Moon as well, which are very important. But then Father Moon used this kind of story, essentially, or this example, because it's absolutely spot on spiritually to identify the problem and suggest a solution. He used it as a kind of paradigm to describe conflict wherever there's conflict, or difficulties in human relationships. So we call it like a Cain-Abel struggle. So this is now not talking about, this is the original Cain and Abel, but it becomes a kind of common thing, right, in humanity, something which is inherited. Abel kind of is in the line which leads to Jacob. Cain is in the line which leads to Esau. These brothers have some difficulty and resentment. They're almost given an identical situation and left to see, what are you going to do with this? Are you going to repeat past mistakes, or are you going to overcome? And they manage to overcome. Okay, so when that comes down to the time 2,000 years ago, at the end of this kind of period of Jewish history, comes Jesus in the role of Messiah, as recognized by Christians but not by Jews. Then the world is poised in a kind of mass Cain-Abel conflict. There's the Roman Empire, which has many good qualities to it, but internally it's corrupt, immoral, unethical. It's a slave culture. It's very brutal. So its achievements are on the base of that kind of inhuman behavior. And it's in the kind of Cain. It's like a worldwide Cain for the world at that time. Are you with me? Yes. It takes on that nature. And Israel is the kind of tradition of Abel, going first to faith. It's not resorting to violence, first of all. It's seeking reconciliation with God. And it's very much the underdog and backwater in the Roman Empire, but nevertheless, it has something so precious to give. I mean, imagine Jesus had been allowed to live, his teaching had been written down, and he could have been taken, and by many disciples, they would have gone first of all to Rome. Maybe Jesus would have spoken in the Colosseum. Later, it was used for throwing Christians to lions, right? Appalling sport in the Roman tradition. But, he could have brought this message of love, reconciling our relationship with God and our horizontal love with our brothers, and brought his ideology of love, if you can call it that, right, in his lifetime, to the Roman world, and then maybe even beyond. Wow. One thing about Father Moon's thinking, he allows us to ask the question, what if? What if that had happened, right? What if? Yeah, of course it didn't happen that way. But to ask what if means, maybe not everything happened the way that was meant to happen. Life is like that, isn't it? Yeah. Not everything that happens in my life I feel is meant to happen. But, all the way along there are decisions for people to make. Fallen people are making these decisions, right? Should we let Jesus live or should we crucify him? Where's that coming from? People baying for his blood, It's a shame. All but one of the disciples of Jesus died an unnatural death. It means they were executed or died. Were these bad people? These were good people. And other religious traditions have those kind of stories, right? Each one has its stories. Good suffers in this fallen world, and righteous people suffer. Often, those are martyrs for the faith. So, the tradition from Abel we call Hebraism, right? This is the wider kind of philosophical impact. And the tradition from Cain is called Hellenism. It's basing on that, this is not simply good versus evil. Please don't misunderstand that. Both sides have good and bad aspects. But the tradition kind of bears fruit in the Hellenic culture, Greece, and then kind of Rome takes it up. So it's a kind of worldwide Cain and Abel situation at the time. They need to reconcile because, as in those words of God to Cain, if you do what is right, won't you be accepted? He doesn't want to choose one over the other. He wants to actually have a harmonized synthesis of the best of both worlds, right? And then we can have a basis to go forward. What is really happening there is like the children level can unite together. Cain and Abel, they're the children, right? They can unite together. And when they unite together, it's like parents can come. So God can really be in the heart and find a resting place, a kind of settlement point in humanity as the kind of parental tradition and lead us that way. So really, fallen humanity in our world at the moment, it's like a world, an orphan world. It's like a world without parents, right? And when the parents are away for an extended period, and you've got a bunch of young teenage boys at home, are they going to fight or are they going to get on very well together? Strong chance of that, right? There's a strong chance. But if a parent comes back, wow, they'll listen, right? And they'll realize, no, I shouldn't act that way, that's right. And the parents can be strict but loving, right? So that is kind of God's role. Interestingly, again, an insight, I'll just mention it here. This is from, time-wise is very short, but from the unification principle, Father Moon noted that in the and he's not the first to do this, in that 400-year period to 600-year period before Jesus was born, there were great spiritual developments all around the world, including, in Greece, the kind of amazing scholars and philosophers and this kind of thing, represented by Socrates, right? An actual photograph of Socrates there, right? And, so this is where he elevates, these figures. And there's Confucius in China, there's Lao Tzu following shortly after, associated with Taoism, Zoroaster, founder of the Parsi or Zoroastrian religion. Upanishads come in Hinduism, the oldest by far religious movement without a specific founder, but going through important reformations in its development around that same time. In Jewish history, you have Malachi as the last of those prophets in the Old Testament, and the last book in the Old Testament. You have, who is there? You have Buddha, of course, right? Coming from southern India. So these things are like flowers which are burgeoning around the world independently. Father Moon's understanding was if Jesus had been received and allowed to live, then there was opportunity to reach out to these other growing traditions, and they were well prepared to understand the message and could have brought world unity and peace at that time. Have you ever thought that? No. So because it couldn't happen, these traditions carried on independently, and at times they're kind of vying for who's right and who's wrong. But actually we need them to come together. Absolutely. That's why we're doing this interreligious work in this age. This is a wonderful academic from Birmingham, actually, Karen Armstrong, if you read her books. She wrote a book called The Great Transformation about this period of time that I'm talking about, this time of the rise of these developments in religion. She said, as far as these sages, that's these people, are concerned or were concerned, respect for the sacred rights of human beings was religion. If people behaved with kindness and generosity to their fellows, they could save the world. We need to rediscover this ethos. Wow. We must learn to live and behave as though people in countries remote from our own are as important as ourselves. Wow. So she saw in the teaching of these people and that flowering of ideas and religious sentiments in that period as kind of promoting this pathway of peace to an ideal society. So we need to rediscover that because we've lost it somewhere. So restoration history comes down. These two traditions remained kind of separate and at each other's throats in a way. So you get the Cain type view of life and the Abel type view of life. This emerges in the 20th century as the kind of fight between communism as the Cain type side and democracy on the Abel type side, which was and is good when it's underpinned by its profound religious values, especially Christian values, right? When we abandon those, it becomes a little bit, each person for themselves, and contains a lot of potential for greed, etc. So, Cain and Abel positions. I said he used this as a paradigm, right? So that means, as a person with this conflicted mind, my body is like Cain and my mind is like Abel. They have to unite together, right? A devotee, for example, in a religion needs to find their teacher, their guru, whatever we like to call this person. I see God in that person or speaking through that person. I need to unite and humble myself to learn the best from that person. That's a good tradition, actually. And it's interesting that most religious movements have one person at the center, not everyone. Communism and democracy, as I said, is in that league, and also almost any issue under common debate nowadays, right? You have a Cain-type view and you have an Abel-type view, and they're battling it out together. Each has their own well-developed set of arguments, but they are according to one or other tradition. Are you with me? Yeah. So it can be any issue, like abortion or something. It's there. You have your pro-life ones, and you have your, rights of the woman's body, or this kind of argument. It's all there. And what is the solution? Its solution lies, of course, in the area of love. This was noted by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I love this quote. We must discover the power of love, the redemptive power of love. And when we discover that, we will be able to make of this old world a new world. We will be able to make men better. Love is the only way.
Wow.
May I have your permission to go on a little bit longer? Is that all right?
How little?
Give us 5 minutes. Is that all right, everybody? Sorry, because I like to stick to times that are agreed, but I'll find a good ending point, right?
Yes.
Also, we never get rid of an enemy by meeting hate with hate. We get rid of an enemy by getting rid of enmity. Enmity is a word I always find difficult to say, but there you go. And here, I commend to you this little book. It's Father Moon's kind of life lessons, I like to call it, right? From his actual life, things that he learned, and he talks about them in very readable chapters. Robin has some copies on the table. If you don't have one, we'd happily provide you with one of these. Well worth reading. He talks there about his own boyhood experience, meeting Jesus in spirit when he was 15 years old, right? And he was given an extraordinary mission to do with saving humanity and bringing world faiths together. And he carried that with him and researched deeply. As a young man, he had to go through many harrowing prison experiences, including he was sentenced for 5 years to a North Korean labor camp. He survived 2 years and 8 months before he was liberated by United Nations forces. People were sent there with a life expectancy of about 6 months. So, these things, amazing. And, when he was free from that, he joined refugees to make a long journey on foot down to the very south of Korea, the port called Busan. And there he built his first kind of temple or place for teaching. This was a shack out of ration boxes, right? So, we have this place today. It's very beautiful, right? But this is where it started, right? Quite extraordinary. Korea was a very impoverished country at that time. So, much of the interfaith peace building is to do with restoration of the relationship between brothers. That's on the children's level. And that's why I mentioned those stories of Cain and Abel, because this is tying in directly to UPF's work. A case study would be, who is that lady in purple in the front there? That is Margaret herself, right? Amongst Al-Aqsa Mosque. Amazing, right? And we took very interfaith groups of people to be a presence for peace in the Middle East. Successive pilgrimages, just to be there and to listen to all different sides, not to take sides, right? A very profound and wonderful learning experience as well. In the UK, we have interfaith prayer services. I was at one, it looked just like this in the same place last Sunday, right? I went to Birmingham with my wife and we joined an interfaith prayer service, amazingly. You yourselves, you're already peacemakers. You're joining this international network of ambassadors for peace. At least we have some people being made. If you feel that's something for you, you can speak to Robin or Margaret and join this network of like-minded people who are doing such important work. That's one area. It's like restoring this relationship between brothers. The other is more parental, right? So this is strengthening marriage and family. It's restoration of husband-wife relationship. And this is the restoration of parents. So it's moving on to a new level. And much of religion, say the last 2,000 years of Christianity, has been trying to establish a kind of worldwide brotherhood of people. Sometimes successful, sometimes not so successful, right? But that was its kind of mission, so that, really the parental aspect of God can emerge and be central to humanity. And this is part of what Father and Mother Moon felt called to do in their role. Within the movement, we say true parents. It's like a parental role to champion marriage and family and bring God's blessings to those who really want to renew their marriages along these lines or be married in this tradition. And that's the case for many here. You've probably heard about these so-called mass weddings, right? Sometimes it's the only thing that when I'm meeting somebody, like you're having your hair done in a barber's or something and talking away, they always say, "What do you do?" And I say, "Well, we start on this one now." How do I talk about this? And eventually they're not sure. Unification movement, haven't heard of it. Reverend Moon, not so sure. Did you hear about the mass weddings? Oh, yes. And I say, well, I was there in one of those, Madison Square Garden, with 2,074 other couples. Wow, how was that for you? Amazing, I say, So, we all have our story to tell. Mother Moon has carried on this tradition. This is in the largest stadium in South Africa. You know, so many wonderful couples coming forward for marriage blessing. Here's an interfaith peace blessing, a marriage blessing at a Hindu building there in Birmingham. And here's one, an interfaith peace blessing at a church in Birmingham. You know, it's going on now. This is also kind of UPF's work and sister organization, Family Federation for World Peace. You too are invited to a marriage blessing. We have one here next week. Wow. And you can join, because these are very significant and very important. It's really the first stage of building, you know, part of this solution, to be publicly identifying, really, with a renewal of vows along the lines of the things we've been teaching and the Ambassador for Peace Award is stating. And it's saying that I want to be part of this solution, right? And very, very much love to see you there. You know, I'm going to try to skip on, but I can't do that very successfully. I'm sorry. So I'm not going to go into all of this.
I love that.
Why does this not help me? I don't know why it doesn't help me. Okay, so sorry about that. Okay, so because time is not on our side as but I'm saying here that, you know, in the religious tradition we mentioned the kind of monk and nun tradition, right? That's taking 3 vows of obedience, actually of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Right? It's very severe in terms of indemnity.
Yeah.
But the only original one that we should all be doing is that of obedience, you know? Otherwise, it's like a delay in this process of restoring those 3 peace blessings. Do you see the similarity? Right? So it's denying the kind of family aspect and sexual relationships. It's denying material things, but it's only part of the solution. It's like, let's, you know, put my relationship with God right first of all, and then I consider other things. Are you with me? Yes. So what we are leading to now through Reverend and Mrs. Moon's peace blessing, this is opening the way for God-centered marriage and God's blessing on your marriage. And people do, you know, testify that very often after receiving this blessing, things go well for them. Their relationship changes for the better. They're, you know, God is much more present in their life, and they experience that. And then we all need not only a God-centered marriage, but we need to change that life of poverty for one of prosperity, right? And living well. And I don't think anybody would be against that, right? So, but everything in its right place, in its right order, and bringing about steps towards that original ideal. So you can say it's like true individual, true family, true world. And, you know, this is the work, one of the central aspects of Reverend and Mrs. Moon's work. Now, Mrs. Moon is carrying that on. It started amongst their own early followers. This was the first such blessing. There were 3 sets like this. These are 12 couples. There were 36 couples in 1960. By 1992, those couples were filling the Olympic Stadium built for the 1988 Olympics in Korea, right? So all those white dots are wedding dresses, right? Here was one. It took place in the United Nations building in New York. But for practical reasons, they're all dressed in their national costumes, right? Which is very fitting for the UN. And these major blessings were officiated by representatives of the world's religions. So it's not just for one, you know, church or group. It's actually receiving the blessing of many. That's one outdoors at a university of Reverend Moon started. And Ambassadors for Peace here receiving this marriage blessing. So they're a married couple, they're renewing their vows. And what do they have to do on this basis? Certain conditions. It means having a determination to respect one's spouse and to keep one's love pure, and redetermine that. And the determination of husband and wife to be faithful to each other, to have a heart to become a true parent oneself, and to have a heart to live for the sake of others. and then freely participate. And this was Father Moon's wonderful work. This is UPF being founded, and I end with this quotation. This was in 1987 at the first Summit Council for World Peace. Father Moon said, "What our world needs today to save itself is a spectacular spiritual awakening. The world must be awakened to the reality of God and rearmed with a worldview based on God-affirming principles. This worldview is capable of eliminating the confusion in our own value system. Of course, the spiritual reality will manifest itself in political and economic strength and military resolve, but the internal dynamic must be the spiritual foundation of faith in God and true love among human beings." Thank you. God bless you. Amen.
How should we pray for Prince Harry? You just mentioned Cain and Abel, the two brothers of Paul.
Cain and Abel, yes.
Yeah, the two brothers of Paul.
It's a good example.
They knocked the other one over.
Very good.
How do we pray for Harry?
Yeah, we will work together.
Nobody knows this is a politically move. Nobody knows.
Same thing.
I appreciate your comment, but let's leave it to everybody to think about that, right? Not an answer from me. Let's treat it rhetorically
Yes.
and appreciate it for what
But
it
it's-
is. Thank
it's
you
good
so
to-
much.
it's good to
So
see,
many situations like this in the world. Certainly. Pray and then let's share our answers. And we'll guide each other how to do
Where
that.
is Stephen?
Thank you so much.
Where is Stephen? Can you get
We-
Stephen for me?
Stephen, are you there?
No. He was.
We have still some Ambassador for Peace Awards,
Yes,
right,
I
Margaret?
have, yeah.
Did you see Stephen, Robin?
I wanted to. Can you ask Stephen to come out? I wanted to thank him. Your thing is, if it's short, you can say it. Because I promised you, if you want to say something, if it's short, you have to say it. It has to be short.
Just, it's on? Anyway.
Put it on. Put it on.
Just about these values. Have you heard of Sadio Mane? He plays for Bayern Munich. He's an international footballer. He's on a king's ransom. He gets massive wages, but there's no mansions, no private jets for him, no expensive jewellery. He's giving wages to about 70 people in Senegal, and he's set up all kinds of facilities for them there. And he's watched a very ordinary watch. No fancy stuff. That's really a wonderful example,
They're
I think.
good people.
Yeah, so just one final thing. Mr. Akbar said earlier about children in schools. The reality is, unfortunately to say this, sorry, but men have been sexualized and
Yes.
encouraged to mutilate their bodies.
Yes.
I'm working with various moral groups who are doing fantastic work to stop this. Anyone like to connect with that, please see me afterwards.
Yeah, sorry, because I have somebody who really is very passionate about it. We'll come together on that. But remind me later, darling. What I wanted to say is I have 3 Ambassador of Peace Awards to give. And besides that, I would say, can I say something about reconciliation? Can I make a very short version of my reconciliation? You know, I am an Armenian, and our nation was massacred by Turkish people. I mean, not the people, but the government, whatever. But the point is, there is a lot of resentment because they are not acknowledging that 1.5 million people died. Yeah. So therefore, you know, I thought that I'm okay. You know, I am UPF. I love the world. I love the Turkish people as well. And then one point came in my life that there was an opportunity to make amends, but the person that wanted to make amends originally didn't say sorry. So I thought in my mind that if somebody doesn't say sorry, how can you forgive him? You know? But then, when David Hanna is talking, if you do well, would I not receive you, you know, God said. So then I made a condition that if anybody says anything about that, I would say, I forgive them, you know. And yet, a young Turkish guy from Germany had come to Turkey, and I was also in Turkey because mother was there. And this guy, in front of me and another mother who's Armenian, went on his knees and said, in front of a group of people, that I am saying sorry on behalf of my nation, on behalf of my... And all of us cried. So it was like a magic, you know, but it's a long story, but I saying that if I thought that if he doesn't say sorry, I cannot forgive him, it's crazy. God says, if you do well, won't I accept you? Anyway, that's that. And anything else we can do later? Because some people want to leave. But right now, Stephen, do you want to come here, darling? Stephen, I want to thank so much. He came just as I came, about 10 to 9, to come to help me. He's a young man. You know, I wanted you to give it. And I want you to come on the stage, my dear. So Robin, where's Robin? Robin is not here. No, just like I can do this. No. I want to do the... No. Robin, you haven't got it. Just come back, please. You took this name, but I don't have it.
You can present one, Margaret, and we'll swap it later. Sure.
Is it
Yeah.
Tamara?
You won't see anything.
That's not. Okay, I needed my partner in peace. This is I want to invite Dr. Imam Bey Kamara to come to receive this award. She's actually, I've known her for some years, but we reconnected recently. She is the president and founder of Disabled International Foundation UK and Sierra Leone. He's from Sierra Leone. There's your friend from Sierra Leone. And she is also a global foundation of supporting vulnerable women and girls, which we do very well, not very well, by connecting with other people every year in UPF. So I'm very grateful. And she actually works for disabled rights. He's a disabled rights activist, female genital mutilation campaigner, global humanitarian ambassador. Now you are our ambassador. Member of Commonwealth Entrepreneur Club, chairperson of Sierra Leone, and philanthropist and multiple award winner.
You want to say what Leone is?
Huh? Leone is Ladies of All Nations, and this is also, we kind of connect with them when we find people that want to know, the women who are battered. They want to know how to do, where to go. And business owner and motivational speaker. Amazing business owner. Fantastic. Okay, my dear. This is Dr. Hannah giving you this amazing award.
Let's have a nice
Oh,
photo.
I'm sorry.
There we go. Who's the main photo
Who
here?
is, it's Raymond. But the finger is in front.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh.
Congratulations.
You all right? Okay, the next person is a very, I will leave the best for last. This is Anthony Everest. He's an amazing person. Hold this, please. He is an amazing person. I've known him through another friend, and I got to know him more recently. He is a dynamic performer whose sound is characterized by a hybrid of jazz, vocals, blues, beats, and indeed a soul singer with an acoustic twist. Where is he? Come, darling. a monthly, no, not a monthly safe space evening of a blend of poetry, jazz, etc. is with gospel music as well as African rhythm, is open to community mic, where people who don't have enough, if you like, experience, they receive experience there. And this is organized by Anthony, and it's recently won Zafa Global Award and Panache COVID Hero Award, plus other awards. He is great. But also he does by sourcing funding and programming logistics and help marginalized artists, especially mental health services. And then the curated music and donations proceeds from songs and albums to other people. Thank you. We're proud of you. For those who stay later, I will ask him to sing.
Can we sing together?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, please.
He's also very musical. And he... You want to say some few words, darling? Just few words.
Thank you so much. This is I will cherish this. I'll put this on a mantelpiece. Thank you so much. What I wanted to say regarding forgiveness, because you talked about that, I wrestle with that a lot. And I remember a cousin of mine who stole my passport to get papers, and I was living with his younger brother because I was a bit depressed. And then he came over and he stole my passport and my birth certificate. So it became a big family thing.
Of course.
And he's my cousin, my mom's younger sister. So my mom said I should say nothing.
Oh.
She said, say nothing. And
Difficult, isn't it?
I was so upset for years. And my mom told me one day, she said, but all these people that you're angry about, the music industry, who did you wrong, they're getting on with their lives. They're making records and having babies, and you're here, you're still miserable. So I realized that
wise woman.
Forgiveness is not really about them, it's for you.
That's right.
So that you don't end up sick in the head and have a mental health issue. So, and also you rightly said that if you do, your reward is with God, just like Cain and Abel. So that has really helped me to heal from a lot of trauma. I've had like intimate betrayals from friends who tried to use me for money. I think last time I was a bit still healing, and I was rammed about a friend of mine who cut me out of a $100 million deal with UN. We'll want to talk about that, but it's all about purpose and really knowing what your goal is. And I actually realized that God actually took me out of that because those people are not nice people. You could be in Ghana, South Africa, they could murder you just to take you out of the equation. So it's always great to be happy and be at peace and find your calling, your peace, and just run with it. Because I love singing, I love music, and I see what music does when it puts a smile on people's faces, and it's helped me heal a lot from a lot of trauma. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Great speaker as well. Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, now my next amazing man is Mr. Christopher George. He is a highly accomplished international entrepreneur with a diverse background, with extensive experience in various business ventures worldwide. He initially began his career as an international lawyer. Christopher then worked as an investigator for Lloyd's of London of the Americas and the Caribbean, specializing in managing and investigating natural disasters. This is very interesting. Across the globe, including Africa. Presently, his focus lies in facilitating business and trade for British brands to Americas. He will be collaborating with our UPF representative in West Africa. This is George Ogurie, which we have to fix the meeting. based in Nigeria to contribute to the development of children's character of education by creating innovative courses, activities, and practices. Please come and receive your award.
Congratulations. Thank you very much.
No, it's lovely.
Thank you.
Good to have you.
Congratulations.
Well done.
Thank you.
Our ambassador. Come closer, Ruby.
Dorothy, do you want to get up? Let's-
Thank you. Okay, I want to also. You're going to say something?
No, that's fine.
Go ahead if you want.
No, I'm very enthusiastic about this project, being a father, and also having connections with Africa from a very long time. I think David today gave such a brilliant presentation on how, the importance of family and how that follows through into one's life, career, and beyond that. So I'm greatly honoured to have this opportunity to work in Africa.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
you.
Chris. You'll make a great
Thanks a lot.
ambassador.
I just wanted to introduce to you Federico. Please stand up. He actually came to support a friend of mine was going to come to get his Ambassador for Peace Award, and going to work 2 weeks here. And yet he couldn't because at the airport she collapsed, unfortunately. But because I think she was very tired or something, but then the aeroplane went. So therefore, he still came from Madrid all the way here because he'd already got the ticket. I'm so grateful to you. If you want to say something, did you enjoy yourself? And just a little bit, and I tell Nazish. Yeah.
So I'm sending a message from Nazish. Unfortunately, she was not able to come today. She collapsed yesterday when she was going to catch the plane at Dubai Airport.
Yeah.
So she was checked, and fortunately, she's okay. But she didn't get the fitness certificate to fly. So I'm here to support her. She's a great woman. She's a great doctor. She's an UK national with Pakistani origin, residing in Dubai and doing a great job.
Yeah,
for
and he's talking very great, well of you. Yeah, he said he's better than me.
absolutely.
That they do online consultations. Yeah, as doctors. Yeah. Thank you, Federico. Please
you.
come again, and let's keep in touch.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Did you like David Hanna? David Hanna lectures? Okay. Now, if nobody has something to say, anybody has something to say? Otherwise, we can go home. Oh, don't forget next week. We have like faith, something and marriage.
Celebration of family, marriage.
Yeah, celebration of faith, family and marriage. Okay, that's what we're trying to do next week here. And anyone who wants to come, you're most welcome. And bring husbands or wives together if you want, if you can. Which one? Tuesday, you mean? Oh, please register. Because today I was expecting like 19, 20 people registered. Look at us now, 35 people. And that's why I apologize for the food. Because my friend asked me how many, and I said the number, as I knew it. And now it became very much. So but it was all right, was it? You know, you're not dying of hunger. Okay. Thank you very much for young people who helped me as well. Stephen, you're the champion. Ariola. I would like to really appreciate Lorna and Madeline. Stand up, both of you. These people have come to help me almost any time I am in London. I am in this office. It's amazing to have people who can come to help you they don't ask for anything. Sometimes we don't even eat. So it's such a good thing. And I would like people to know that I have such good friends. Juana also, she came. We love you, Margaret. Yeah, we love you, Margaret, yes. We love you, Juana. We love Lorna. About what? What about it?
Sorry, guys. I'm just encouraging everybody, whenever we come to functions here, please register. It is important for us to know the numbers, not only for like catering purposes, also security purposes. We need to know who's in the building and who we're expecting. So please, in future, please can we register when we do come to events. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Quickly, if you can do it quickly, you can do it. Yeah, you can sit as well.
One row of chairs.